Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Would you join me in the pledge? Please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, be with us today as we conduct this business of the city. Bless those in attendance. Watch over our first responders and our military. We thank you for the moisture that we received, and be with us throughout the day. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. We have, is there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the April 16th meeting?
Nope, looks good.
Okay.
Mayor.
Okay, they'll stand approved as submitted. Okay. At this time, we have allowed time for public comment. This is for anybody that's not on the agenda. And I guess we have Lidwell here. That's the only one I have.
Hi, my name is Donna Gershner, and this is the Garden City High School Resist Group, part of Lidwell Finney County Health Coalition. We work on tobacco issues in our community, and some of the activities that they've worked on this school year are passage of the Tobacco 21 countywide. They went to a leadership conference with other Resist chapters in Topeka. They did Kick Butts Day at the Capitol, where they spoke with their local legislators. And they've done education presentations on vaping and tobacco at Horace Good Middle School and Kenneth and Henderson, reaching all the middle school age teens on tobacco. And they've also picked up tobacco litter. They did a scan, which now they will tell you about.
My name is Alexis Ortiz, and I'm a junior at Garden City High School. Our process was tobacco litter was gathered throughout the park, and the litter we collected, a flag was placed to mark where it was found. At the end of the scan, all flags were picked up, and tobacco litter was placed inside of our jar for our presentation. Some hidden dangers in the park were cigarette butts are most littered item in the U.S., 1.7 billion pounds a year. Cigarette butts contain over 4,000 harmful chemicals and are non-biodegradable. Each one takes 10 to 15 years to begin breaking down. Poisons leached from cigarette butts into the environment can be harmful to children, pets, and wildlife if ingested. Our findings at Harold Long Park, it took 45 minutes. All 6 of us, including 2 adults, collected 242 cigarette butts, 1 lighter, 2 cigarette packages, and other tobacco materials 2 days after the Garden City Recreation Easter egg hunt. The tobacco litter was concentrated near the playground seating area, the gazebo, and the walking track. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sadia Ahmed, and I'm a junior at Garden City High School. So children tend to imitate adult behavior. Every year in Lake, Kansas, about 1,200 children under 18 years old become newly daily smokers. How do children learn how to talk, to play sports from us, adults? And when they see us smoking in like friendly places such as parks, playgrounds, they see that behavior as acceptable. Parks are about like clean air, natural beauty, and engaging in healthy activities. Smoking just does not fit in that.
Hello, my name is Austin Moore, and I'm a freshman at Garden City High School. Tobacco-free parks are clean parks. Cigarette butts are the most littered item in the world. Discarded cigarettes and other forms of tobacco are toxic, hazardous to the environment, and costly to clean up. Cigarette butts are not biodegradable. Small children and animals are at risk of swallowing, choking, and burning themselves with discarded butts and poisoning themselves with the drug nicotine. Tobacco waste makes parks and playgrounds look dirty and uninviting. Tobacco-free parks provide children with clean and healthy places to play.
I am Desiree Ortiz. I am a senior at Garden City High School. Tobacco-free parks and playgrounds are important, and in many communities in Kansas have instituted outdoor tobacco-free ordinance at parks, zoos, athletic fields, playgrounds, trails, and even city sidewalks and streets as a way to keep both children and the environment protected. I'm going to read you off a list of some places that have passed. Arlington County, Arlington, Buffalo, Bueller, Channing, Emporia, Garden City, Great Bend, Haven, Hathaway, Highland, Humboldt, Hutchinson, Junction City, Kensington, Lawrence, Sabetha, South Hutchinson, Westwood Hills, Williamsburg, Woodbine, Lenexa, Liberal, Ladona, Nickerson, Owata, and Princeton. And some places that are trying to get this passed and working on a plan: Barton County, Edwards County, Lidwell, Finney County, Harvey County, Lyon, Northeast Kansas Environmental Services, Riley Co-Health Department, Salina Central Kansas Foundation, and Seguin Kansas Academy of Family Physicians.
So my name is Jack Hoaxall. I'm a freshman at the high school. The GCHS Resist chapter of Lidwell, Finney County recognizes the great support that the city has shown in our community in the way of health issues. Passing the Clean Indoor Air Act ordinance in 2006 that protects the public in indoor settings, which also includes all public assembly seating such as bleachers and grandstands located in the city. At which some point we would like to strengthen this policy to include e-cigarettes, now that we know that vaping creates secondhand and third-hand exposure. Passing of Tobacco 21 in 2017 is protecting youth from pursuing tobacco or tobacco products until they are 21, which is a major step in protecting teens. Protecting children and passage of tobacco-free playgrounds in 2018.
Hello, my name is Mariana Macias, and I'm a senior at Garden City High School. We are here at this time to ask you to go one step further and protect all citizens in public parks, as has been done in other communities with the passage of tobacco-free parks, which will also include e-cigarettes, and eliminating exposures to secondhand smoke or vape. We have provided a sample ordinance for you in the packet that was handed out at the beginning of our presentation. With the passage of this ordinance, you can obtain signage free from Kansas Department of Health and Environment to help with enforcement. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to one of us or Donna, and we will be glad to answer your questions. Thank you for your past support, and thank you for the time and consideration of this ordinance. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
We'll take it under consideration. Is there
Great job.
anyone else that is not on the agenda that would like to speak to the commission? Okay. If not, 6A, I guess.
Mayor Commissioners, item 6A, the governing body would like to recognize and congratulate graduates of the 2019 Citizens Academy. And I'll invite Lauren up here. I'll do that.
It's not working.
It wasn't on.
Oh,
We're good. So there's a PowerPoint that you can, it should be under citizens. And then I think if you just push play, it should. Okay, so you can look at those and not look at me. So for the last 7 weeks, we had 12 area residents participate in Citizens Academy. They were able to visit and learn from every department. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't great this year, so they always had to bear the cold, but they always kept coming back, so I think it was okay. They always were really engaged with every department. They asked a lot of questions, and I think it made it really enjoyable for all of them. They even got to experience an actual fire call. I'd never experienced that, and I didn't really know what to do, and they just told us to stay calm, and they left, and then they came back all in the same time we were there, so that was really cool. So they haven't technically graduated yet. They'll graduate on Thursday. We'll have our closing dinner and our ceremony, and they'll receive their certificates. We only, I think, have 2 here tonight. Yeah. So we'll have them take a picture with you guys as well. But our 12 graduates are Ann Case, Austin Love, Christy Graber, Igali Diaz, Lance Rupp, Laura Tavia, Linda Motley, Melody Oliver, Rebecca Powers, Rick Lofink, Tiffany Hernandez, and Zachary Champlin. Then I'll take a picture of you guys with them.
Yeah. That'll work.
Oh, you better now slide out of it. Yeah, move this way, a little bit trade you. Okay. Oh, Shannon, you're kind of hiding me. Sorry. There we go. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. We're good.
All right. Congratulations.
We'll leave this
I think he wants you back.
So I'm going to put this in front of you again. Oh. Run away.
You're gonna get a call
I already texted Austin's mom.
Yeah.
Okay. You're good. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
They're making
Anybody
more.
else?
We're gonna let you sit down and then ask you to come back.
It's like anybody else before we move.
Our stand is broken.
Only 3 more weeks and school's over. I can't
Yeah.
believe it. Yep.
Right.
Good. Okay.
Item 6B, the governing body's asked to consider and allow the mayor to proclaim May 2019 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mayor, I make
Sure,
a
mate.
motion
Yeah.
that we approve the proclamation as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, Lindsay, that we approve the Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Is there anyone in the audience from Compass that would like to speak?
Yes.
I'm the lucky nominee, and I'll be very nervous, so please accept my apologies for that. I'm Kim Fisher from Compass Behavioral Health. We serve 13 counties here in Southwest Kansas for behavioral health care. We appreciate your support in making this proclamation today. Currently, we serve about 560 youth in our community-based services program. We've seen a drastic increase in that over the last year, and we can continue to see those numbers rise. So we just appreciate you helping us bring awareness and destigmatize behavioral health treatment in our communities. And we have some of our wonderful staff here today who provide services every day to those children and families. So we're hoping for a photo op too, I'm going to be honest.
Okay. Mayor, if you want to go down, I'll read the proclamation. And the proclamation that was just approved reads, whereas addressing the complex mental health needs of children, youth, and families today is fundamental to the future of Garden City, Kansas. And whereas the needs for comprehensive, coordinated mental health services for children, youth, young adults, and families places upon our community a critical responsibility. And whereas it is appropriate that a month should be set apart each year for the direction of our thoughts towards our children's mental health and well-being. And whereas Compass Behavioral Health, through its unique approach to serving children, youth, and young adults with mental health or substance use disorders, is effectively caring for the mental health needs of children, youth, young adults, and their families in our community. And now therefore I, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor of the City of Garden City, Kansas, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Month.
You're safe.
We've got some that are hiding in the back. You're not supposed to be turning your back a little bit. There you go. Now I can see you.
And I ended up in a picture, just our noses.
Yeah.
One more.
Why don't you come up and I'll present it to you?
All right, now I can see the back. I see you, Cindy, come over here. Okay. One more.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Item C, the governing body is asked to consider and allow the mayor to proclaim May 12th through 18th, 2019 as National Police Week. The ceremony is scheduled for May 15th, 2019 at 10 a.m. to be held at the Finney County Law Enforcement Center. And I believe Sealand left the flyer on the bench and has also emailed that to you so that you can, whatever.
I'll read that proclamation at
Okay.
the ceremony.
That sounds
So,
good.
is there a motion to approve this proclamation?
I move that we approve the proclamation as presented.
There's a second. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'll just keep this. Okay.
Whoa.
That's scary.
I was just saying.
I put it
Give it to the
forward.
clerk.
Okay.
The next item, the governing body is asked to consider and allow the mayor to proclaim May 5th through 12th, May 5th through 11th, 2019 as Public Service Week in the city of Garden City.
I'll make the motion, we approve the proclamation as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proclamation for National Public Service Week. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'll read the proclamation if all of you would like to come down. And I also invite any city employees, but also if we have anybody that's representative from the county government, school district, community college, state employee, federal employee, any public servant out in the audience that wants to come down with the rest of us and have their picture taken, that'd be great. I'll read it at this point. Whereas Americans are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and city levels. These unsung heroes do the work that keeps our nation working. And whereas many public servants, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, border patrol officers, embassy employees, healthcare professionals, and others risk their lives each day in the service to people of the United States and around the world. And whereas public servants include teachers, doctors, nurses, scientists, train conductors, astronauts, nurses, safety inspectors, laborers, computer technicians, social workers, emergency responders, city and county laborers, computer technicians, social workers, and countless other occupations. Day in and day out, they provide the diverse services demanded by the American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. And whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Now, therefore, I, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor of the City of Garden City, do hereby announce and proclaim to all citizens and set seal hereto the week of May 5th through 12th as Public Service Recognition Week in the City of Garden City. Thank you. So anybody who self-identifies as a public servant. And evidently there's
Self-identification, or is it kind of
It's just us being.
it's a calling?
and evidently there's a discrepancy between whether it's May 5th or 11th or May 12th. So
That's all yours.
yourself whether to celebrate.
Oh, no, there's definitely more talking.
Just trying to hide
They might make themselves somewhere that when they people start fighting, they
Come in. I'm well.
You're Fred. There you go. Michelle. Right now it's, I tried to get her, she said no, so I said no.
Hi, Rashawn.
Hi, guys are looking up.
You have to leave now.
My turn. Jared.
Yeah, get over here.
Huh? Oh, yeah, okay, that's okay. Hold the proclamation. Okay.
No, I can't.
Ready, go. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Gotcha.
Thank you. Airbrush it. Thank you very much.
There's some added decor for your office.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. We'll do a selfie with you later. Holding the proclamations.
All right. Week.
Item E, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Ramon Perez, Apollo Tech, to be categorized as a local business on the application for an itinerant merchant's license. Sealant, would you like, or Jared, whoever's presenting this?
Sure. As you can see, Ramon Perez has applied for the itinerant merchant license. He would like to be considered as a local merchant. The current ordinance does state that the business, to be considered as a local itinerant, to have 1,000 square foot physical location in city limits, and be in operation for at least 12 months prior to the application. So Mr. Perez wanted to present and ask the governing body to be considered as a local merchant. And Mr. Perez is here if you have questions for him or if you have any other questions for me. The difference in fee schedule is to be considered local is $365 a year. If you're considered under, or if you meet the criteria or don't meet that criteria, non-local is $300 a day or $900 a month.
Could you come
Yeah,
up?
Mr. Perez is here.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Gentlemen, ladies.
My question to you is this, how long would you be in business? You think how long would?
How long I'm gonna be in Garden City?
Yes, in Garden City.
Well, considering the company asked me to move from the great state of Maryland to the great city of Garden City.
Yeah.
I was just promoted to a regional sales manager for the
congratulations.
state of Kansas.
Okay.
We were, a little bit of background on Apollo Tech. Apollo Tech International is as the name calls in, international company. We have business all around the United States and also in Europe and the Emirates Kingdom. Apollo Tech distinguishes itself from any other companies on the water purification business because we use the latest technology, and the owner of the company doesn't care at spending money on the newest technology to make the water purification systems that we offer to the community the best ones in the market. We've been in business for over 30 years, and The reason that I'm asking the governing body to consider me as a local, the company has the headquarters in Irvine, California, and everything is managed through the headquarters. I do have a local office in my home, which I manage my own business. We have a storage unit that is about close to 1,000 square feet with about $20,000 in seating equipment that I haven't been able to move due to the restrictions of the ordinance. We're talking about an ordinance that has over 10 years old that I believe personally that needs to be reviewed to consider the opportunity to business coming into town to be able to do better for the community. I am not a competition from the local companies. I know that there's 2 companies in town that do water systems. They call them water softeners. Our company does not provide water softeners. They're water purification systems with 10 stages of water that passes through the system. Most of the local companies only have 3 to 5. Why we should consider Apolotech and myself as a long-standing member of this community? Like I said in the beginning, I moved here from the state of Maryland on my own when the boss told me that he needed to open again Kansas. He was here before 8 years ago in the city of Hutchinson. Unfortunately, we had to remove the manager from the company that it was handling the Hutchinson office. And I don't know the details, but the boss decided to shut down the operation in Kansas. 8 years later, he asked me. I've been with the company for 15 years. It's been a great honor for me to work for Apolotech International. And like I said in the beginning, I was just promoted to a regional sales manager for the state of Kansas. My petition to you, asking humbly, is to be considered as a local business, not an itinerant, non-local. I am here to stay. I am here to provide the community with education about the water quality, the quality of the water that the city provides, and the opportunity that the citizens of Garden City and adjacent communities have to obtain a water purification system for the whole house with warranties that are covered by the company and with professional service 24/7. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Would
Yes,
you
Ms. Bryant?
consider opening a business, like an actual business location, so that you could qualify under the ordinance?
Under the ordinance, yes, it says like Mrs. Hurtado mentioned in the beginning, the ordinance requires that you be in a business for 12 months.
Yes.
As a non-local. You have to be 12 months in business to be considered local. The fees, I believe that they're a little steep, but that's my own personal opinion. We are opening an office in Garden City in the near future, like I said on my letter to the city. We will be opening an office that it will provide education to the community, whoever wants to come in and check out the systems, that ask as many questions as they want about the prices and the systems. And we are planning on recruiting sales personnel to service Garden City and in the state of Kansas.
Do you have a time frame when you're going to open that business?
The timeline is around 3 months.
Well, I agree that we've discussed the itinerant merchant license, and I know that we were going to have that as a pre-meeting, and, or I thought, that's something I know that we have talked about often. And, well, thank you for moving from Maryland to Kansas. We're excited to have you here. And I know, I personally I love seeing new businesses come in, and like Commissioner Burns, I mean, for me, it's this issue of if you're going to have an actual business opening, or if, and the thing that's hard is that you've not been here 12 months.
We've been here since I moved. It was in the beginning of March. When the boss asked me to open the office here, I moved on my own. I said, okay, well, moving expenses are on me. I drove all the way there from here, almost 2,000 miles. And we are not in Garden City because I didn't find a rental property at the time that we were moving here. I'm in Lakin. In the near future, we'll be moving to Garden City. The nature of our business does not require a local building because we can do this from our house. Like I said in the beginning, everything is managed through the company. If you were interested in having a demonstration, like for example, Ms. Connie, can I use you as an example?
Sure.
Ms. Gunning invited me over to her house because she had some issues with her water, harness, white spots, things like that. I will come in, I will do my demonstration, I will offer her a variety of different equipments that she can use depending on the water source, city water or well water. And we will check with her if it was okay, do a background check, a business credit check, and if she's approved for a personal loan for the unit that she's gonna be acquiring, depending on which unit it is, we'll do the installation the very next day by a professional certified plumber with the city of Garden City. We have all the permissions, and we have all the certificates that they're required by the state and by you guys in the city to operate. The only thing that we don't have is a physical location, but we will have one, like I said, in about 3 months. I'm just waiting on the boss to give me the go-ahead to start shopping for an office.
So I want to ask a question, and I don't know who to direct this to, and Matt, you might tell me, but it says here that, again, this idea that they have to be operated for at least 12 months, is that 12 months in Garden City, or is that 12 months as a business?
Garden City, as a business.
In Garden City, or is that 12 months, because again, the business has been in existence?
The commission has taken, the ordinance says Garden City.
12 months in Garden City,
The
okay.
commission has waived the out-of-town versus in-town for businesses located in Finney County. You usually do that each Christmas season for
Oh, right.
an
Yes.
embroiderer
Right.
that has a storefront outside of the city limits in Finney, but in Finney County. I think that answered your question.
No, thank you.
One thing I would say is that the example that Mr. Perez gave, being invited into Mrs. Cunningham's home, that person would not need the itinerant merchant license or itinerant business license. If you are invited by an owner, you're not itinerant as far as the
But
definition.
ringing the doorbell, saying what you do, and then getting invited
Mm-hmm.
in is still solicitation and requires an itinerant
Right.
merchant's license. You can't retroactively be invited in.
Right, but he didn't use that as the example. But I don't know whether Mr. Perez is saying he's going to be a business, and then the way he operates is he goes door to door. I'd have to look at the ordinance, I suppose, if you already had a business there, say we're True Value Hardware, and then you sent somebody out as a salesperson to go door to door. I don't know that
Still
we
requires an
require
itinerant merchant's
itinerant
license,
merchant
and it's a
license.
local one.
I'd say, second thing I'm going to say, we are working on making changes to the ordinance. It's not the highest priority, but we've met with, or I have with Caleb and Melissa. So we're going to make changes. I don't know if the 12-month requirement is going to continue or not in the ordinance.
I think
What did
I mean, I think that we've had this discussion multiple times here, and I think that there's good reason for the length of being an established business. You know, it's a 1 year that we ask that you be established here. I think that there's also some competing values here where we're trying to, you know, make a fair environment for local business owners and folks. Certainly, sir, you're not the first person who's come through with a similar kind of business plan, or folks who have a more mobile type business. And we've had these policy discussions, and then we come back and say we're going to revisit it. Well, maybe now's the time to play out those values and really see where we're at. I think just in my short time on the commission, we've kind of tried to be lenient in some instances, and it's kind of burned us, honestly. And so I feel like until we honestly make a change to the ordinance, hear all the stakeholders, look at it from all perspectives, we really do need to follow the word of the ordinance. And I mean, I think that there's reason for that time frame, and there's reason to have an established business front. So
Well, that's.
I don't know that I can
The
go along
other
with this.
thing is we don't really want to set a precedent. You know, you're not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a not a flower shop, but.
Coffee shop.
Well, yeah.
Mobile dress shop.
Mobile, and those are the things that, you know, you're one person, you know, maybe it would work, but then the next guy comes in, he wants the same thing, and so you can see it creates some problems for us.
And we've,
So-
we tried to work off of the, well, our intention is to have a freestanding business, and then that never materialized, and so unfortunately, I think we've kind of learned from that we really probably need to stick to the ordinance as written until
Such time.
there's fruition of the intention.
Do you have anything else? Did you
I
want-
completely understand the position that the governing body is in regards to the ordinance.
Mhm.
What I'm humbly requesting is to be considered as a local business owner, because no one moves 5 states away from home after spending 6 years in the state of Maryland
Yeah, I
to a
understand.
new city just to start all over again. The reason that I'm here is to provide a good quality service of a water purification system for the citizens of Garden City and adjacent communities and in the state. Like I said, our business does not require a local building, but we will have one in the next 3 months. And I think that we had complied with everything that it was asked on the non-local itinerant merchant license. Last week, I was given the license and just waiting for the commissioners to sign my contractor's license, that I believe that it was also pending.
Yeah.
Apolitech International has been in business for over 30 years, and the boss is backing me up 100% in this new endeavor for the company. We were here 8 years ago, and unfortunately for mishandling funds from the previous manager, and that's what I'm allowed to say, he was forced to shut down the operation. He was here 8 years ago for the long run. I would have been here 8 years ago, but somebody else messed up. I'm not here to mess up anything. We've been doing business. And the reason that I found out everything that we've been going through this, prior to this moment, it was because the boss did everything that he needed to do to open business in Kansas again. But unfortunately, he forgot to tell me that I require some personal licenses. And I got in a little bit of trouble with the Boys in Blue about a month ago. And to be honest with you, they made me feel that I was not welcome. I got surrounded by 5 squad cars in the parking lot of the building when they found out that I was here asking for the license. That, it was a little bit scary for that young man. That is my son.
Yeah.
Once again, humbly I request, and I thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Is there
Thank you.
anybody in the audience that would like to speak about this? Make a comment?
I think the last exception you granted was Pinky's Food Truck, with the condition that they establish a brick and mortar business within 1 year. That year has lapsed, I believe, and they decided not to
Renew it?
pursue that business interest. So I don't know if they're still have their truck or not, but they're not going to establish a
they're still
permanent
pursuing it.
business.
Yeah, there's a,
They're still pursuing it.
Well,
They're looking
they
to
had
break
told
them
us
up.
that they weren't.
They're not pursuing another itinerant merchant license.
Right.
right.
Okay.
Mayor, I make
So-
a motion that we deny the request to be considered as a local business.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we deny the request to be a local business. Is there any other discussion, commissioners? If not, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, I'd like
Thank
to
you.
ask that you move up on the agenda to now, items 10A and B. If you wish to hear from Mr. Bennett representing the developer on the Campus in Kansas project, he needs to leave the audience probably in the next 5 to 10 minutes to catch a plane.
Okay? Yeah.
Maybe Rochelle can make a couple calls. But, if that's okay,
Yeah.
we'll move to item 10A.
All right.
Everybody's asked to consider and approve a resolution to establish a public hearing of June 18th, 2019 at 1:30 PM for the creation of a Community Improvement District, or CID, for Campus in Kansas. If approved, it would be Resolution 2810-2019.
28.
Yeah, 28.
2810.
Yeah, 2810.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Again, this is the second step in creating the CID. This resolution is just to establish the public hearing for the Campus in Kansas Community Improvement District. This came before you on April 16th meeting to bring that petition forward, and this is bringing that petition forward. The alternatives before you are the governing body may approve the attached resolution. The governing body may not attach the governing body may not approve the attached resolution, or you may defer action until a later date. Staff recommends alternative number 1, and there are no fiscal obligations from the city under the CID program.
Okay.
I just want to state that I appreciated receiving the feasibility study and the opportunity to review it. Thank
That
you.
was very nice.
Mayor, I make the motion we approve Resolution 2810-2019.
Second. Troy.
Been moved and seconded by Troy that we approve Resolution 2810-2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the resolution to establish a public hearing date of June 18th, 2019 at 2 p.m. for the approval of the Campus in Kansas Tax Increment Financing Project Plan.
Okay.
Governing
Hi
body.
again.
Thank you. Again, we've already approved on March 19th the intent to create the Kansas and Campus area, the vacant area, and the demolishing of the 2 buildings as part of a TIF redevelopment district. As part of the state statutes, the developers must provide a project plan that gets approved by the Planning Commission. That was done on June 18th at 2 p.m. and they approved that it was consistent with our comprehensive plan and intentions for developing the area. So the motion before you today is to set the public hearing for June 18th at 2 p.m. This is essentially the second step of part 2 of the TIF project planning process. So before you, the governing body may approve the attached resolution. 2, the governing body may not approve the attached resolution, or the governing body may defer action until a later date. Staff recommends alternative number 1, and there are no fiscal obligations from the city under the TIF.
So Melissa, I just want to make sure, how much can they recover under the TIF? I think it was in the feasibility, I saw that figure and I can't find it now.
Yes.
Was it the 5,136,180?
I believe so, under the
Infrastructure.
Okay,
approved.
that's the infrastructure that they can, okay.
Correct.
Nothing vertical.
That's what
It's a
the
big
CID is
project,
for.
so yeah.
I had a question about the pro forma,
Mhm.
just the valuation. I'm trying to find it here in the packet as I'm going through, trying to page down. So I'm sorry, but I was wondering about how the way that the value goes up in the increments over time. We go from a obviously undeveloped valuation to I believe a 10 million. I'm sorry, I don't have the pro forma in front of me now as we skip ahead. I believe it's the 3rd column, if I'm recalling from memory. Do you have it up? Man, there's a lot of letters here, hold on.
Yeah.
Feasibility.
Thank you.
So Exhibit E, the TIF pro forma.
Oh, I'm sorry, the second.
Wait.
No, that's not it. Sorry. It must be all the way at the end of this. This was included in the packet twice, and so I'm trying to find that. But I think the pro forma was just at the end. I'm sorry,
That's
I
fine.
thought I would be able to get to this.
Oh, and the feasibility study, not their pro forma?
No, it's the pro forma on the second inclusion.
You're on the CID. We're on the TIF.
Yeah, it's on the
That's
second
why.
one with this, that was included with the TIF resolution.
So the
And
TIF
I
project,
I had a question about how the numbers were derived, but.
the
So
TIF
those-
project plan on page 22 of it, is that it?
It's
I'll get there. I'm in the second one now.
22. Only goes to 17.
Hoping I won't drift by it.
No, it's on the other
Must
one.
be the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
On the
22,
TIF, yeah.
Here you go.
No, let's see. I'm sorry, yeah, no, I'm sorry, it was the projected sales. So that's what I was trying to figure out as I was looking at all the statistics about kind of, you know, what the income, which I was kind of interested in what the household income and the projected increase and how they derived some of their projections about what supply and demand was. But looking at the projected sales, so we go from 1.7 million to 10 million over the course, which obviously the sales and that projection is important because that tells us about the availability to pay back on this investment. But I'm just wondering, are these numbers, they go up in this fashion? And I see it's really over the first 7 years that they kind of exponentially increase, and then it's a slower increase up to the 10 million. But is that just based on build out of properties and increase in space, and so you expect like maybe 2 of the sites are built out, and then 3, and then 4 over the course of those years?
And the types of businesses
And the
that they'll
types of
have
businesses, okay.
within there. So they.
I was just trying to make sense of that.
Yeah, through their market.
Big increase.
Sorry. Through their market study, they've projected that they'll have the retail, office, and restaurant uses there. So they've done projections over time to filling out those spaces that provide those numbers from previous sales tax receipts that they've received.
And that kind of tracks then with the projected assessed value, because you have the unimproved at 185,000, and then at the end we get to 2.8 million, and that's with the finishing off of all 8 lots, whatever.
That's their estimate, yes.
Okay, yeah, that was my question. Sorry for the delay
Okay.
in formulating
okay.
it.
That's okay.
Now I have
Any
no
other
idea where we are.
questions?
Mayor, I make a
Melissa?
motion that we approve Resolution 2811-2019.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2811-2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. See you.
Travel safe.
All right.
I will just say,
Back.
Macs are not squirrel friendly.
Are we going back to?
We're going back.
Yeah, we could. Trying to find, we're ready for F, I believe.
F on
Yes.
6F.
Yep. Yeah, here we go.
And thanks for doing that. I knew he needed to be up in the agenda. I didn't know what was looming was getting through,
Light.
yeah, getting through check-in and TSA by a certain time. So I'm sure he appreciates that. 6F, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Ginger Sando, Girl Scouts local office, to waive the $100 park reservation fee for use of Stevens Park on Saturday, August 10th, 2019, for National S'mores Day from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. And if there's a staff person, and Andy is, are you going to present this? You get to be the guy that goes up against the Girl Scouts.
Glad I showed up. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. This is the same request that you guys granted the waiver on last year. It's a 2-hour event in the middle of Saturday afternoon, and it's not posing on any other events or requests or any of that going on. And so they've asked for the request, we brought it before you, and so we just leave it in your hands to decide what you want to do.
We did it last year, so.
We did.
Okay.
I would treat these waiver requests as city sponsorship, so the events,
Yeah, that's
sort
right.
of. Because otherwise, if we always grant them, and it seems as though, then what's the reason for the fee if we're going to always grant them? But I think for
Right.
community events, it does seem like we kind of choose this as our way of sponsoring it. Is that correct, am I thinking?
I think that
That's
represents
how it is.
recent history on the matter. I could probably go into some background. Today's meeting probably isn't the one because I think you're going to be here a while, but perhaps when we get to general fund revenue, that portion of the budget, we can call back on, why do we have some of these fees when it seems like all we do is waive them? There's an answer to that question, and it's not too long ago, and the short version is it wasn't the intent to waive them all, but the practice has been to waive them all.
But like we would maybe waive the Allen family reunion request, because that really isn't essentially a community event, whereas this is. And so I can justify that within the thinking.
Yeah, and the different, the line gets drawn in different places for different reasons over time, and it doesn't ever seem, that the pendulum doesn't go back the other direction. And I just think it would be worthwhile for the commission to have that conversation again, because, you know, if it is the intent to have a less restrictive line, I mean, there is a line, I mean, I think, then we can communicate that instead of telling everybody no. It puts our folks in a position where they'd much rather be able to tell people yes, rather than telling people no, delaying them making plans on their event, so that it can come here and be held up. So we'll have that, we can have that discussion closer to the general fund revenue discussion, because that's where that's where the other side of the equation hits,
Right, I was wondering where
for
that
you
could
all.
budget discussion.
You know, who pays if this group doesn't or another group doesn't.
And if there is a cost to maintaining the property and all of those things, we have to.
But the fees are there for a reason, though. I mean, and
Well, this is
can
only
see
a
that-
2-hour event,
Right.
too. That makes a little difference if it's an
I
all-day
understand
event.
your point, Commissioner Burns.
So-
And I can see how you can say that. It's, you know, it's for, I can say it's for a good cause. It's for, you know, the Girl Scouts are providing, yeah. It's something that we
S'mores.
probably need to look at.
S'mores event.
Yeah, I move that we approve the request to waive the $100 reservation fee for Stevens Park on August 10th,
Is there a
2019.
second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we waive the fee for the Girl Scouts National S'mores event. S'mores. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thanks, Andy.
Item G, the governing body is asked to consider and approve requests from Angelica Castillo Chapel, president of the Community Mexican Fiesta, and specifically asking waiver under Code Section 6-35 and 6-133 to allow possession, consumption, and sale of cereal malt beverages or alcoholic liquors on the sidewalk, streets, and public park at Stevens Park on Saturday, September 14th, 2019, for a beer garden from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Wow.
Didn't catch that before.
That seems,
Are they gonna have are they gonna have?
Halftime?
Yeah.
Naps?
Are they gonna have
That could be
a,
a typo. That could be a typo.
okay.
I'll bet
Are they gonna
that's,
have a sectioned off area in
But
Stevens
they will
Park?
be, yes, they'll
Like they have
section off.
before and
Yes.
check IDs?
Check.
and
Right.
that
Yeah,
type of
Safe
thing?
serving all of the laws.
And she wasn't absolutely sure that they would do a beer garden, but she wanted to put the request in with the sign request as well and do it at this time. So it's not a definite that they're going to do, but she wanted to get the approval if they decided to have a beer garden.
you think the time would be
I'm
Yeah,
not-
11?
the 6 a.m. is too early.
I think they're reserving the park the whole day.
Oh,
I don't know that they're necessarily
Yeah.
going to have the beer garden the whole day.
And then
but
we
I don't
did
know
this
the time.
request last year, is that correct?
They've done it in the past,
Right.
yes.
I'll make the motion, we approve the recommendation for the sale and consumption of cereal malt beverages and alcohol during that day at Stevens Park.
What about the waiver for the sign?
That's a separate,
There's no need for a waiver for the signs because we recently amended the regulations for signs, for temporary signs.
Oh.
So there's no longer a fee for that, so.
okay.
All right. It's been moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the request, Mexican Fiesta Committee on cereal malt beverages on September 14th, 2019, from an unknown beginning to 6 p.m. Any further discussion?
Who made the
All-
motion?
I made the
You
motion,
made the motion.
and
Commissioner
Commissioner
Burns
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 seconded the
seconded.
motion.
Got it. Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item H, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the use of Lee Richardson Zoo and the serving of beer and wine on May 30th, 2019 for Leadership Kansas Taste of Garden City event.
Mayor and Commissioners, Garden City is lucky enough to be one of the cities that gets to have Leadership Kansas come to our community every single year. Not everyone gets that, especially the smaller communities don't get that. And we've also been ranked #1 for several years because of our hard work on the event. And so one of the things that we did a few years ago, as many of you are aware, is we changed the location from Southwind on the Wednesday night to on Thursday night from Southwind to the zoo, and then incorporated 5 restaurants serving different fairs, and we called it the Taste of Garden City. And so they have Judge Tommy Webb come and talk to them about his story. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but it's a great one. And then they get to taste all of the different varieties that we have here in Garden City. And it's been absolutely beautiful every time we've done this. And everyone asks me what my backup plan is, and I never have one. So I'm just going for the 3rd, I think, is this year. So we're just asking, we do have to close down the zoo early because we're bringing in alcohol, and we're setting it up, and we don't want to have to try and it's basically me and a few other people, and we can't keep track of if anybody has access. And so close a little bit early, and then we get set up, and then also the waiver to actually serve the beer and wine inside the facility.
Jennifer, how many people participate in Leadership Kansas?
So their class is typically about 40, and they've added a couple new programs. So they actually have what they call the emerging leaders now. And so a student from each university gets to participate, and they pick different cities that they want to go to. They almost always pick Garden City. So we usually get all 3 emerging leaders along with the class. So we usually have those 43, plus we have Liz and John who come along. So we have those 2. And then you have a lot of local alum that participate, and ours covers Southwest Kansas really for Garden City. So we get some from Liberal and others that come in for the day or come in for the evening events. And so we usually plan most of our events for about 50 for all of this different stuff that we do. So.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we allow Lee Richardson Zoo to close 2 hours early on May 30th and allow service of beer and wine in the zoo for the Taste of Garden City.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the request for Leadership Kansas on May 30th at Lee Richardson Zoo. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Mayor and Commissioners, I'm going to start with 7D under Manager's Report. We've got some students at Kenneth Henderson Middle School watching us. They are part of Miss Neeb's class, and they have written you letters. They were in your packet. If you read through those, it's a variety of variety of proposals that they have to make Garden City better. So if you all are willing to do that, you may just make comment of a couple of the ideas that jumped out to you individually, if you're comfortable doing that. And maybe not everybody wants to, but they're watching, and I thought if there's some way we can give a little bit of a reaction to those, that would be great.
You know, they really have,
that's
they really have kind of the same ideas and concerns that most of our citizens have in the community with the expanding retail, which is one of our goals that as the commission. There were quite a few letters kind of pertaining to retail business, but also restaurants, and particular restaurants that I think all of the commissioners have heard about in the community.
One commissioner joked about it.
And we agree. And we agree with what most of them.
I mean, we're working and trying to get additional retail establishments in our community, and, Garden City's open for business, and hopefully we can accommodate and try to get some of those businesses in our community, but we're working towards that. I won't hog the whole.
Well, I was glad to learn what was cool,
others.
what you should wear is cool. Some of the places they thought you should buy clothes, because I wasn't sure what was cool. So the suggestions were very. The other thing I thought was really great, and I appreciate Commissioner Cessna, this idea that they are shopping local. And they're looking for wanting to spend dollars in Garden City, and so that was really exciting. I also, some of the bigger issues that they dealt with, with alcohol, and they ran the gamut STDs. I think that their awareness So I was really interested on how they chose their topics, but I think they're diagnosing situations and saying, hey, here's some possible solutions, knowing that that they're really involved. So I really appreciate their involvement. It was great.
I was wondering, did they respond to your survey?
If they are a student in Garden City, they responded to my survey.
Yeah,
But
Okay,
having
because
things to do, that was great.
that will answer some of those.
And it kind of goes along
Depends.
the lines of our students that we had earlier today.
Really involved.
Being involved with the tobacco and Live Well, Finney County, and trying to make a difference in our community. And it was nice to see that and doing the research. I mean,
Really
and
good.
backing up, not only here's our concern, but here's some research that we can back this up on as well.
impressive.
And so very impressed with all of the letters.
Well, I appreciate the communication and indeed the effort that went into this, and I think I was excited when I read the premise of this was a discussion in class. I think it's an excellent idea, and then I would go a step further and challenge the students to say there are things that we can do to try and help facilitate these things, and I think we set it as goals, and we try and programmatically and strategically work towards some of those, but I think also it's a part of how do we all make our community better. And so in addition to what we can do to maybe bring some stories in, well, how do we approach, what our community wants and design and those kind of things, and thinking about what as community members, those students as they grow into being adults, and what they can do to help bring about change in their community, whether it's from a governmental standpoint or as individual citizens. And so I would kind of challenge them to even make that a broader thought topic for the future.
It's a really good project. I really enjoyed reading through what everybody had to say. I mean, this is a good example of what kind of good things we can see from our school district and starting to get that involvement with our community and seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'd
It's
love
really
the
good
students to
stuff.
come anytime, so I think so we want to invite students to come anytime. I thought this was an excellent project too.
Thank the teacher also
Yes.
for thinking about this.
It's all right, thank you.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
to the students watching, your letters were great. I appreciated reading them, how organized they were.
Yeah.
And they not only talked about what they wanted, it was upfront and very clear to the reader. We talked about that at the staff level, about the first thing somebody reads on an item should be a clear a clear question for the decision maker. And having a subject be talked about for 30 minutes and you're the decision maker, or the person presenting it perceives you to be the decision maker, and you have no idea what it is they're asking.
Right.
And we see that a lot. And so to the best of our ability, we try not to model, or we tried to model what we would want to see if we were the decision maker. And I really appreciated that their letters do that. And for 7th and 8th graders to grasp that that's the most important thing they can get across to somebody is impressive. So thank you. I'm going to jump back up to item 7B. We have another student who visited us about a year ago and proposed the idea of a city flag. That fit loosely in a goal of the commission's, but there wasn't movement on it in 2018. We talked about it at our retreat, and I think there was an interest that, we still have this overarching goal. Yes, we still feel like the flag discussion could be part of it, at least is what I took from the commission's discussions around our goals. And so I was pleased when the Makers Space folks stepped in and said, hey, can we help get this going? We think this is what something we'd like to have going on in our facility. And so I think I've attached a couple of pieces of correspondence. We made an attempt to connect Mr. Blood and Chris from the Makerspace. And so look for that, the timeline in and around August for something to come back and be presented to the city commission. None of this obligates the city to adopt a city flag, but I think we have the advantage of people pay attention to our conversations and what we do. We have the advantage of some strong ways to send out images through our website, through our social media, through Cox Channel 8 subscribers watching replays of our videos, and we can even produce our own videos and show some of the things. We have the ability to survey a broad audience as well. And so probably from that August date, we'll be backing up at some point, maybe a month earlier, to begin soliciting input from the public. So some of that's still up in the air.
They have their workshop on May 11th, too.
That's right, yeah.
Garden City
Makerspace.
Community College.
Yeah, Makerspace is the group behind that. Folks that are interested in the flag project, or just learning more about flags in general, or just want to play and be active in the Makerspace, please look that up. We've attached a flyer in our packet that people can access off of our website on the May 7th agenda. And maybe if the Channel 8 can zoom in on the packet, May 11th, 2 through 6, Gary Jarmer Annex on the Garden City Community College campus. Again, May 11th, 2 to 6 p.m., Garden City Community College, Gary Jarmer Annex. Item C through F are monthly reports. Do you have any questions on those?
I do.
Go ahead.
Are you sure?
You first. Ladies first.
Thank you. So I had a question about the beacon install at the airport and what the expected time frame for that is.
Okay. Rochelle, would you mind coming on in? Come on down.
Good afternoon. Actually, pretty timely question. Yesterday, the FAA called and they're reviewing the 95% plans and specs on that project. Since once they complete that, they thought it would be at the end of this week. Then all their responses will go back to our engineering firm. They'll sum up everything, complete plans and specs for 100%, and then probably bid out in the end of May, early June, and then probably start installing the new beacon around July, and it should be, I think the project is scheduled for 14 days, so hopefully by August that project will be completed.
Great, thank you, Rochelle.
Yep.
And then I was also reminded about, and I was glad to see that the Citizens Advisory Board participated in our police organizational study, and I was wondering when we could expect the results of that. Chief, do you know? Is it in hand? Is that what's in your hand?
I can speak to that.
I thought you were raising papers up. Oh, okay.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Burns. So I have spoke with the consultants, and they are they have a portion of the report finished. They kind of expected that it would be completely finished this week, and said they could rush to get me a draft, but I said next week something that was actually in final format would be better. And so they'll work to get that to us next week to review, make any questions or concerns or thoughts that we have that they need to look at, decide if there's anything else, any other work that they need to do, so if there's any additional meetings. And then from there, they'll create a final report that will come to the commission and to the police department and to all of those involved with
the next
recommendations.
Month or two.
Yeah, I would say, that it may not actually make it on your next meeting, but by the first meeting in June, you should have the report.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
So I had a question. Will those recommendations impact the budget? Will they have time for the police department to prepare a budget in case there are some recommendations that they want to include in next year's, or?
So there are things that could potentially impact the budget, but those are things that Matt and I will discuss both with the consultants and with the police department. And we've had some of those discussions prior to this, going into it, knowing that those things could come up, and we'll keep you aware of those as we move forward.
I did want to say thank you to our local airport. I've been in 4 different airports recently, and I'll tell you, the experience in our local airport and the way they treat you, you didn't get yelled at there. I just really appreciate the way it moves through. And
Yeah.
I mean, you actually, when you come home, you're like, you're finally home. So I just wanted to compliment. The pilots landed at a one time really windy, that they did an awesome job. And the way the airport staff took care of you, getting everything in, it was phenomenal. So I just wanted to say thank you. It was made coming home really worth it. So.
And I know on an agenda like this, the city manager adding stuff probably doesn't bode well for him later on in the meeting, but I did think this was timely. Sam has put together some good work on a project that I asked him about, and so I'm going to let him go over that with you. I think you'll be pleased.
It was back where you were.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Matt wanted me to put together the effects of our bad winter that we had, and then one of the effects that we have is a lot of potholes. This was probably the second largest winter season we've had since I've been here in 27 years. So what we put together is a location where the potholes are currently located. And as we complete those dots will change to another color. They'll probably change to a yellow. So the community can kind of follow us through the community and see how we're progressing through that. Our first priority will be in the sections. We broke this up in the cycles that we do our street sealing. So there's 6 cycles. And this year, cycle 6 is supposed to be chip sealed, and that is all the way to the east side. I'm going to say that's purple. And so the crews will be busy in that area fixing the potholes first. Mary Street on the west side of Taylor Avenue will also be sealed this year up at the top left there. So we'll be completing that. So any street that we're going to chip seal this year, that's the first priority. The second one will probably move over to cycle 1, which is the brown. And the brown is next year's choice. And so we'll be getting those streets ready to be crack sealed. And then we'll just follow the cycles as we go through. Now, just want the commissioners to know, this is a snapshot of the potholes for the last 2 weeks. Things can change. And so as we go through the cycles, we'll have a person in charge of driving the streets, and if anything pops up, we will add that to the list as well. This will be on the website, and so again, the community will be able to follow us through that. There's a list that went with the map. It's color-coded with the same colors as on the map. One thing that will change on the website is we'll have another column. We'll take some of the columns away, and we'll put another column in there that says when it was completed. And so we'll have a date that identifies when we did that pothole.
And we're gonna do this in-house?
All this work is in-house. This is only repairing potholes and asphalt. We do have some other damage that we'll have to address at the same time with the concrete crew, and we'll be working on that at the same time. Any questions about this?
Great.
Looks good.
I know a lot of
Thank
people
you.
have asked about this, and I think having it on the website is going to be a really good tool. So I really thank you for putting this work in.
I would say to the public, again, this is a snapshot. If they see a pothole that's not on the list, please give our department a call, 276-1260, and we'll put it on the list, and we'll address it as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
I guess my only question was on the monthly sales tax, how it dramatically dropped, almost by $100,000. So that might be a concern. Just something that going through the reports kind of really, I took a notice towards. So.
Okay.
And we'll call your attention to meetings of note. There's a couple of things we want to add. One of them you already know about. It's the police memorial service. We've hit you up on that through the proclamation and through leaving something on the bench, and I think Celine forwarded to you an email. And the other thing is an event that the fire department is hosting as well, and so that's of interest to you. I don't know if they need the RSVP for the fire event.
Yes.
They do, okay, so RSVPs are probably,
Because I have tickets for you.
oh, that's a different, this is a
Oh,
different thing.
the training, sorry.
The training.
I forgot, the training.
That's cool.
But I do have tickets for the other thing.
And that's the Keeper, that one's the May 11th, that's on their Keeper of the Flame Award.
Yeah, the other training, you should all have copies of it. I don't have it. I didn't keep myself a copy, but you should, it's training that they're doing May 17th, I believe.
Oh, at the airport?
It's not at the airport, it's
It's a
at
three-eye-
the exhibition
Exhibition.
parking
Oh,
lot.
Sorry.
It had a fuselage of a
Okay.
aircraft, but it is at the
Yeah.
fairgrounds.
Okay.
All right. So with
All
that,
right.
I think we're ready for the appropriation ordinance. If approved, it would be ordinance number 2482-2019A.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the appropriations ordinance.
I second the
See
motion.
through. What did I do with it? Okay, all those in favor of that motion? Appropriations ordinance 2482-2019A, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, the next item, bear with me,
C?
is
it-
C under section 10. And this is the governing body being asked to consider an amendment to the City of Garden City's Code of Ordinances. Section 1 dash, lost my spot. Oh, I'm sorry, section 6-86 and 6-129, regulating the location of businesses licensed to sell cereal malt beverage, enhanced cereal malt beverage, or alcoholic liquor within the City of Garden City. And if approved, it would be ordinance number 2830-2019. Caleb?
You have Neighborhood and Development Services staff was requested to review with the assistance of the city attorney the ordinance regarding the sale of cereal malt beverages, enhanced cereal malt beverage or alcoholic liquor within the City of Garden City. The review was specific to the location of churches within Garden City to existing establishments allowed to sell or provide alcohol. Currently, the city ordinance states, "It shall be unlawful to sell at retail any cereal malt beverage, whether for on or off-premise consumption within 200 feet of any school, church, or library. The 200-foot restriction in this section shall be measured in the shortest straight line from the property line of the school, church, or library to the nearest portion of the building or part thereof occupied for the use allowed by the license granted by the city." In reviewing the city's ordinance, staff found it differentiated with the state statutes when determining the distance of a church to established establishments allowed to sell and provide alcohol. The Office of the Attorney General of the state of Kansas has provided an opinion clarifying the state statute that when determining the distance from a church to establishments allowed to sell or provide alcohol, the distance is measured in a straight line from the closest points between the church building and the building that would house the retail liquor store. In general, municipalities have the ability to be more restrictive in their statutes than those of the state. A review of the existing establishments allowed to sell or provide alcohol in relation to churches only resulted in one location in the city where there is a conflict when analyzing the current use of the ordinance. And as you see in the map that's provided, there's only one conflict as far as distance. There are a couple others, but those are locations where churches moved in after the establishment of was already there. But there's only one that is currently really close in measurement and conflict as it exists at this time. In that location is between, the one location conflict is between the First Baptist Church at 611 Buffalo Jones Avenue and the Valero gas station at 410 West Kansas Avenue. The church property is located within 200 feet of the gas station's building footprint. At this point, even if the governing body made the ordinance change, it is inconclusive if this would resolve the conflict. The church and gas station both have been in existence in their current locations for many years without any conflict to this point. Legal counsel and neighbor and development staff have provided a revised ordinance which is consistent with the opinion of the Attorney General of the state of Kansas. Distances for churches will be measured from the nearest portion of the outside wall of the licensed premises to the nearest point of the church building. The proposed change will not change how distances are measured for schools or colleges. Your alternatives are, is the governing body may approve the ordinance, the governing body may not approve the ordinance, the governing body may defer action until a later date. If it is the desire of the governing body to relax the regulations to match the minimum standards of the state, staff would recommend alternative number 1. If it is the desire of the governing body to maintain the current regulations, staff would recommend alternative number 2. At this point, there's no fiscal obligation to the city of Garden City with this amendment that's before you.
So Caleb, can you tell, so you said schools and what else didn't change?
Colleges.
Okay, and so what's the difference? Why are we changing it?
Church.
I think
For churches.
if you look in the state statutes, there's a differentiation between the two, and I believe, I can't speak for it, maybe Randy can. I'm not sure why the city did that, maybe that to keep them all on the same measurement scale, I don't know.
And I think it stands to reason that a school or college uses its all of its outdoor space is intended for use, whereas churches can have large tracts of land that serve other purposes.
Yeah,
Speculative investment, or just, it was a big piece of land on the perimeter of town, or it was a subdivided country acreage that, 5 or 10 acres go to the church, then suddenly you've got a buffer that begins to impact a
And I think
large
it's
tract of
interesting because we
land.
talk about as it impacts now, but we also look at the growth of the city. And so, when churches own tracts of land, they have plans for those. So I think that saying, hey, this is how it sits now and this is the only way it impacts, I think that's, the idea of, so what's the vision that a church has, or, other organizations, especially houses of worship, in developing their land. And so I think that was kind of, as I thought through that, that was, this is how it impacts now with one. But I'm curious about it in the future, if we checked with if churches who could possibly be impacted, or places of worship who have land, if we check with them, what their development plans are in the future, knowing that they also are part of, the community, so.
A lot of times in the information that we've looked at, a lot of it's left up to the local jurisdiction, because 200 is the number that's the minimum adopted by the state right now. And the measurement is what you have the ability to look at, to change. There are some communities that have gone much further in that separation distance, and others that go to the bare minimum that is needed, and they adjust the measurements according to their local needs. And so that's what it would be up to is if you look at what the needs are for the community. And yes, in the future, you have to look at those things as well. It's hard to look at all scenarios that can happen, because we have made several changes in the past, how this impacts, businesses in our downtown area and things like that. Whereas there was some legal ability for the city to be able to, with certain districts, to prohibit uses outside of that, but now that has changed as well, and so those uses can come in conflict with each other from time to time, but it's hard to assume or make assumptions on what those scenarios may or may not be in the future.
So
I think
basic-
go ahead, please, Mayor. No, go ahead.
Well, are you talking about, basically this ordinance would be would be the same as the state, right?
Correct.
The
In other words,
interpretation of the state statute.
Yeah.
The statute is ambiguous on its face. It says 200 feet between
It doesn't
the school and the establishment that sells alcohol.
So that's
So
the
what does
building.
so what does that mean? Now, so the AG on 2 separate instances has said that we interpret that to mean for schools and colleges, property line to the building that sells the alcohol. For churches, it's building to building. But it doesn't say that in the state law, it's just an interpretation.
I think
The 2 Attorney General opinions, and for your clarification, deal specifically with retailers of alcoholic liquor, which are liquor stores. And state statute addresses liquor stores only, and I can't find anything in the state statutes that talks about clubs, establishments, CMB, establishments, grocery stores, C-stores, Walmart. Those are not regulated by state law, but my research has indicated since at least, I think, 1968, Garden City has chosen to regulate the location of drinking establishments, although they didn't exist at that time, and clubs and taverns. And then when we recodified, I think it was in maybe the 90s, we chose to keep those, and it looks like they were code sections drafted by the League of Kansas Municipalities, because they're very consistent with other cities in Kansas. And so Garden City has had a longstanding belief that we should regulate the location of places that sell alcohol. But by state law, you wouldn't have to, just liquor stores. And you wouldn't have any ability to shorten the distance with respect to liquor stores, because they are regulated by the state.
So the intention of the ordinance, as I understand it, and from what we've talked about, the intention here is to decrease the exposure that children primarily, and that's what the concern of the pastors that submitted the letters to us is, really to establishments that sell alcohol. And then I think it really does beg the question, well, what is 200 feet if the building is oriented in completely the other direction versus oriented facing, and does, the church or does that change, what the intent is and how we can accomplish that intent of decreasing exposure? So I think if we look at this and we really want to say, well, our intention is to decrease the exposure to children, because that's what the concern is, that was the reason for this ordinance, which is all I can kind of see from what
The reason for the ordinance was there was a conflict with a development project and
right, for our ordinance.
and
But I
a
mean the
church.
original ordinance.
The original ordinance weighed the private property owner's interest in developing their land with the neighboring interest of, does my use warrant a community underwritten buffer against a use that might be a legal use on the property next to me?
Right.
So it doesn't,
Yes.
you're saying it
In
does not
public health.
change liquor stores, or, so they still would not be able to locate, or, that's what I'm.
That's right, yes. No,
So-
liquor stores,
Very specifically.
the change to the code is going to reflect how the Attorney General has interpreted the state law as the state law applies to liquor stores. But what we're talking about here is not a liquor store, it's
retail.
It's
Licensed
a drinking establishment, a restaurant that sells alcohol, a grocery store, those kind of
Well, and I guess my question
establishments.
goes to what Mr. Kentner is saying is, some cities have said this doesn't meet our needs anymore because, what are we trying to accomplish with this, really? I guess is the question I'm trying to get at as we discuss this policy matter.
And I think we did reach out to several religious organizations to invite them to come and share their thoughts about this as well. I'm not sure if there was here that would like to share their thoughts. As far as your review of this is, your consideration should take into consideration what your purpose and intent of it is.
Well, the purpose was, as discussed at the last meeting, that the developer of the property that we're talking about for the Starbond project determined that our two code sections are more restrictive than what state law has been interpreted to be. And they came to us and asked us to take a look at the code sections and see if there was any way that we could bring them in line with what the interpretation of the state law is. And so that's what we have done with the revisions to 6-86 and 6-129.
Let's see. Come on now. State your name and who you're with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. My name is Tim Fields. I'm the pastor of the Church of the Nazarene on 2720 North Campus Drive, just a little bit north up there. And we do have a concern about this. Any, to me, reduction of the buffer between our facility and other uses of other people. I understand the economic impact that you have to challenge here to balance these two, but also the definition of church, I think, has to be described. If we're just about us and our parishioners and our building, that is certainly one thing. We are very community-minded. What we do on Wednesday nights for children and feeding them hundreds, 300 and some plus. What we have intent of opening a daycare. What we also have the intent of a community teen center going on our property, because we have 13 acres, which right now we're using 6.5, almost 7. The other part would be, and straight to the south of us, are commercial lots that are for sale, that any reduction, if you're going to go from building to building, to me would impose a greater risk, and this is personal opinion, of course, and our stance upon us than from the property line, which is currently discussed and what have you. So I would be much more at ease if we went from property line to property line. So I'd ask for you this consideration just for our community efforts and what we do, that we keep the buffer like it is.
Sir, do you see a distinction between, as Mr. Griselle indicated, the liquor stores versus a restaurant that then sells cereal malt beverages, or do you see a distinction there, or any of that?
Absolutely. I think I will say it this way, not imposing ourselves upon anyone else's beliefs, but I would call it, in my world, and it's left to interpretation of definition, a common sense practicality of restaurants and what I shop at Walmart, I eat at Applebee's, I understand all those differences. I don't want a bar or a liquor store being directly exposed to our facilities. Okay, so this is just, and not that we can keep that, but that's what I'm saying is, if they meet the stipulations of distance, there's nothing we do about them. I'm not saying it. I'm asking is not to reduce that, to allow them even in more encroachment upon us. Because when I, for instance, in particular, when we do a teen community center, which is in our imminent plans of doing this, which most people haven't heard about, we would do things like fifth quarter get-togethers, Friday night after the ball games. And if we had liquor stores close by and things like this, I just think it would add a lot of complexity to it. Restaurant, I could name a few restaurants if you want me to name that I'd like to have us to come into. But yes, I wholeheartedly believe there's a distinction.
Pastor Fields and I had a conversation last night over the phone, and there were some things that I couldn't answer for him, but I appreciated that question, because it was one, our code, as this is written, is really licensed premise. And so there isn't a hierarchy of use of, one person may call it common sense, but it's common to them, and it's a different common to somebody else. So, whether or not a grocery store should be in, or a convenience store should be in, or a restaurant, or, a restaurant that, serves only this, or is closed by a certain time of night, that can be different people can have a bit of a different opinion. This code's pretty hard and fast. It's proposed. It's either licensed premise or it's a not licensed premise, and so the commission may want to sort with that. But last night, Pastor Fields expressed particular concern given what their uses were for their neighboring properties, and so they got a neighbor to the north. Its use is sort of cemented long term.
Right.
These properties along here still have still are influenced from the presence of the high school, so there's still this 200-foot buffer, which plus or minus 25 feet is about where the cursor is on the screen. The difference between property line or building for this particular site is the difference between the road and about halfway through the lots. So these two lots aren't really affected, and in fact, there's already a medical facility, I believe, public knowledge, that's platted for that site. This is developed already into office space. The only thing that kind of in theory remains is this, but that's influenced by the buffer. So all of the properties, even under the current ordinance, that the buffer that would be generated by the Nazarene Church are covered. So pulling back with respect to the desired teen center, and then I believe desired expansion of some of the other younger age activities that you're looking for, there isn't the danger of a liquor store or the dangers or opportunity.
So
for
it's not going to
restaurant.
affect you.
So can
It's
a
not going to affect
tavern,
you.
yeah, so can a tavern though, so you talked about liquor stores, so like what about a tavern? But I don't think you can do just a straight place where it just serves liquor without food, is that correct? Or does
we
it?
changed it.
No, we can't. We just
We
changed the
changed
ordinance.
that.
Oh, we did.
Yeah,
Well,
It's-
it was
it's
voted
important
on.
to know that
It was
by vote of the
voted
voters.
vote of the
Yeah.
county.
All uses are subject to change over time. So you gotta keep that in mind with everything, is so everything is subject to change over time, and like their additions to their facility and additions to what goes around them could change over time. And so your ordinance is what regulates it now and into the immediate future. So.
Yeah, I think the two pastors' letters, they make the case for access. And like, you know, it's just like the teens were here today. We did a T21 ordinance. We also, you know, now they're asking for additional strengthening of that ordinance with parks. And I said, so, I mean, you know, accessibility obviously plays into, I mean, they have all of the documentation here in their presentation. So obviously accessibility to these type of, you know, this type of alcohol, I mean, does play a part, just like it does with cigarettes and nicotine and those kind of things. So, I mean, that's what's hard. I mean, the Star Bond is an important, it's an important, you know, place for, I mean, it's an important project. So, I mean, that's what's really hard. I don't know if, and then you don't want to piecemeal things, but I mean, you know, making a hard and fast rule and saying.
Would a fence make a difference in that buffer?
Now, and if I may ask this too, and again, Caitlin maybe could address this too on this particular part, and I appreciate the relief that, in my mind, of what's happening with my church, but I also want to speak for other brothers and sisters out there in other churches, and I don't know what other impact they could possibly be. I have no idea, because I just learned of this last night myself, and I was just concerned immediately for those lots that are prime location lots, economic development. I get all of that,
Yeah.
but I also know what our plans are, and
Yeah.
we certainly, I want us to be very cautious about how we mix the two, if I can say it that way. Everybody has the right and freedom to do what they want. I just want the caution of how we do it around our kids.
Yeah.
And the important thing too is to note is that all facilities that come in before, for example, if a business is already there selling liquor, a church can move in beside that, and that does not force them to go out of business because the church moved in after the fact. However, it does impact when someone's looking for a new facility to locate. If a church is located in the near vicinity, those are the things that they look at, which they can change their site plans to accommodate being that distance, whatever that distance you choose for it to be. But those are some of the things that there are ways to work around these things. Sometimes they're not as convenient as everyone would like them to be, but there are ways to work through these. But it comes down to what you want it to be measured from.
So the 200 feet you came up with from the state statute, is that how you were determining that? And then the other question is, what if a school moves in somewhere, we say we decide to build another school somewhere? If there is an established liquor store there, would they have to move because it's a school?
No.
So they would be grandfathered in also?
Same, anything with school, the items that were listed in the state statute, the schools, the churches, the libraries, if they're there first, or someone moves in after the fact, and there's already liquor stores in those areas, they're allowed to be there. Now, our local regulations then regulate if that's been vacant for over a year, then they lose that ability for them to stay as a tavern, let's say, or a retail store. After a year, they lose that ability to do that, and so that's how the law is established to help make those changes into the future.
I would just ask the consideration not to be discriminated against because of our intent and community effort and purpose.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to recap some other conversations, you got a note from First Assembly, Pastor Sheridan, and I visited yesterday as well. They've got a property that is a little bit bigger than their facility. It certainly extends to the north and extends to the south. While Pastor Nathan had general concerns, and I think he shared that with you in his letter, he also had kind of site-specific concerns, and if these properties or this property were to redevelop into something, what would the chance of that being a licensed premise be? This property is still going to be influenced by 200 feet from the property line from both of these facilities, which sort of, I could see an argument being made that it, while this is college-owned, this doesn't apply, but I could see the argument that it does. But either way, the 200 feet from this property line extends not to the groundwater management district office, but does cover the hair salon and whatever's here. And then this property similarly is impacted. I heard from Cornerstone, which is out in the county. So this doesn't affect them, I don't think. Caleb can tell me I'm wrong on that if I am. But they, he generally had the opinion that he didn't think it applied to him, so wasn't really going to weigh in. But frankly, he didn't mind if it was. He felt that it was an opportunity to reach people who needed the message that he offered, and wasn't looking to advocate for something that imposed something onto another property. So they kind of welcomed any neighbor, but also understood that it probably didn't apply to him. It didn't. Let's see.
Pat, you want to go over to the Star Bond area?
Yeah. And then
From the First
the
United
last one
Methodist.
is Todd Anthony, senior pastor at First United Methodist Church, commented generally about the what's in the Methodist Church Book of Discipline with respect to alcohol. And I don't think their property has, Kansas and, I guess in theory, the redevelopment of like where Papa John's is or the gas station into something, it would impact, could impact that, but it's also Maine and Kansas. Star Bond, is this map, this is a homemade map, does this go all the way over?
Yes. Those schools. There you go.
I'm having memory issues, it's,
Still south.
yeah, I can't move it, I know it's south, it's frozen. Go ahead and talk, this is,
Okay,
we're gonna be staring at a screen that's not moving for a while.
I was just going to point, as you look at the, here, there's two churches that are located, two church properties that are located with the churches located in the front. The area of the location for the Star Sports of the World facility that would have facilities that, in their case, would be some of the outdoor and indoor space that may be used for serving of alcohol is where this kind of come from and why they're asking it, because our regulations are stricter than the states, which is allowed if you choose to keep it that way or if you choose to change it. And so this is the measurement and the layout. So every case is going to be different that you see in regards to this. We have this case, I believe there's a case on 8th Street that was one a few years back that we dealt with. And so as far as concerns about how close they were to those facilities. And so as far as the Star Bond goes, that's what you have is you have two churches located right beside where the facility is going to be.
Caleb, these are two churches side by side, the buildings are approximately side by side. Are there buffer issues with both of them, or only the one that has the property configured more rectangularly?
That's correct. The issue is that, yeah, as they own the property to the,
Thank you.
as they own the property, the Star Bond property to the south, here is the Star Bond property. So The property that would have the biggest impact is the closest property to where they would be building and constructing. And so if their property lines were equal, the same, it would be the same for both properties.
How far away are those properties from the Starbond? Are they over 200 or less than 200? Or?
Right now, we're in the layouts that have been presented. There is a road that comes through the area. And so the road right-of-way is there, which is just over 50 feet wide, plus the some landscaping area, and then it goes right into their facilities that they will be building. And that's where their concerns are, is that that extra 50
But the
feet.
building is like this, right? I mean, approximately.
Yes, the building sets here. There's
But it doesn't have a buffer issue with this property.
Correct. Right now, there's no buffer issue with this property because the road and the space in between is enough that there's no problem there.
Where's the church on that left property? Where's?
The church, both of them, one church is here and one is here.
Oh, yeah.
So they have a big long.
So
Yeah,
there's
so I mean,
just a lot of empty space.
if we're believing that our buffer keeps people safe, I mean, and you know, you have to have a law and apply it and those types of things, I get it, but the irony that there's two side-by-side churches and you could have some kids playing here and some kids playing here, and these kids are gonna be completely immune and protected from any harm that's being done by a licensed premises, by a restaurant serving margaritas over here south, and these are gonna be like lured in like a tractor beam, I think the buffer makes sense, but a buffer based on the size and configuration of a tract
But there's
of
no tension for the buffer
land.
also. I mean, I don't think, you know, I mean, making that kind of a consideration, I mean, that's kind of the obvious, but I think there is a reason for a buffer. And one thing is they could buy that piece of land and then the buffer would be complete.
By
So-
what piece of land?
Right there, the
This.
one that's sticking out there, then the 200 feet buffer is taken
Oh.
care of.
Yeah.
And then everyone is
Well-
treated equally, you don't have to change the ordinance and everything goes back to the way it is. So
And
I
we
think-
can't mandate that.
Yeah.
And nor can we presume that
No,
that
no,
hasn't
I'm not saying you
happened.
can mandate, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
they don't,
Well-
I don't think they want to sell it, or,
Oh, well,
but, you know, that's up to them.
However, I think that also in that discussion too is the churches have the right to use all of their property to their full extent
Yeah.
when they choose to develop it. And so you have those balances when you choose that decision.
But then again, what you said, there's gonna be a road going through, I mean, there's gonna be a road kind
Yeah.
of buffering between the churches and the
there's a
Starbond issue.
setback,
And then there's
too.
yeah. And then you said there was there was like landscaping and stuff as well,
Yeah, they have an
which
outdoor
cre-
facility, so.
which will create another buffer to that facility.
And they do have the ability to configure and move the building on the site plan. I mean, you know, if the commission says, no, this 200 feet from the property line of churches is absolutely what we want, then that's.
Well, but
that-
they've
You
got,
have the authority to have that be. What they've asked you to do is say, we've explored other options.
Right.
One of our other options is to show the commission that their local ordinance is different than what the Attorney General has said is how this should be applied under state law. And so that's their request of the city, is for you all to consider.
And I think that that's reasonable. I mean, when I looked at this, I thought, well, that seems reasonable. But then when we do go back to we have to be attentive to the needs of the local community, and we have now, you know, several local church leaders who have said, no, we don't agree with this, and here's our reasoning why. I mean, I do think that, you know, that's valuable in listening to that input, because we asked for that. Had they said, oh,
we had one. that
well,
didn't.
while I can question whether it's actually accomplishing the intention
Yeah.
of what the
Right,
state,
right,
I don't think, I agree with you exactly, Mr. Allen, in that I don't know that that's actually keeping children
Well, I
any
would-
safer, which is what but they feel it is.
And I would think most folks probably saw the expansion of like liquor and something stronger than 3.2 billion in
the
grocery
grocery
stores
stores.
as being a slippery slope. But I would argue that probably reduced the number of liquor stores. We had the highest number of liquor stores per capita. And so something that You know, folks who wanted to be more restrictive or more protectionist would have said, well, don't do that. Don't do that in grocery stores. Probably reduced the amount of alcohol, or over time is going to reduce the amount of places you can buy alcohol in Garden City.
Yeah, so the thing that's confusing me is that the Star Bond issue isn't going to sell, like, they're not gonna be like a liquor store, but they're going to have
Retail.
food with liquor, right?
It's a restaurant, and
Right.
some of these
Right.
folks have said, well, no, the restaurants are okay, it's just we don't want
Yeah, see,
the
that's-
local
that's
stores
what I
and
don't get. So
cinemas.
because the distinction, I thought the distinction, you know, from Randy's explanation is that liquor stores were already well regulated, and so I'm surprised that a place that sells alcohol and food, just like a normal Applebee's or Jack's or all these different things, that's why this ordinance is impacting that. Because I agree with you, I think that a liquor store, I mean, the impact there, you know, the accessibility, and to pretend like alcohol isn't, you know, I mean, a huge issue in our community, it is.
So the liquor store regulation, location restriction is not changed by these two code sections. It's regulated by state law, and it is already being interpreted as the AG opinions have interpreted. So nothing you're doing is changing that.
This is more for the retail and.
Restaurants.
For restaurants.
Grocery stores, C-stores.
So right now, if we had a liquor store come in and they wanted to cite,
In the Star Bond.
They could.
well, yeah, they could. Let's go back up here where we talked about it. Right now, if this property weren't, probably have to be this one. A liquor store, if it was 200 feet from that church, could
Property
locate
line
here.
to the Business.
Because it's not, it is the property line.
Property line, right?
Right now.
Oh, okay, never mind, scratch that. Scratch it, forget it. Forget what I said. It's being enforced as the state.
State.
So the only setback difference is with restaurants.
Right.
I agree
Mayor-
with Commissioner Burns, we usually don't get input, and then you have input, you know, on these, and so that's where,
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve ordinance 2830-2019.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2830-2019. Is there any further discussion? What we're voting on? Basically to repeal the current ordinance, right? Amend it.
It will repeal the current
Yeah.
ordinances, but it amends them as well.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
nay.
3-2.
Item D, the governing body is asked to consider a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning from agriculture district to general commercial district east of Stone Creek Drive and west of Wilson addition of Garden City, Kansas. If approved, this would be ordinance number 2831-2019.
All right, you have the complete staff report in your packet regarding this request.
Oops, I'm needing to be over here. Okay.
Is that, let's see.
This request went before the Planning Commission at their April 18th, 2019 meeting. All 7 Planning Commission present voted unanimously to approve the requested rezoning and comprehensive plan amendment. Any questions?
Is that, I mean, can you even build on that?
It is going to be it's
Creative.
possible, but you have to be creative to fit it.
Because
but
that,
yes.
that narrows down at that north end.
The owners, what they would like
It's a
to
one-way
do
hallway.
is put a car dealership there.
Wow.
And so in order to do that, they will have to go through the site plan process. Conditional use permit is required for a car dealership, so they'll have to go through that. There will be a public hearing in regards to that request as well. So
But I guess you could put a building down at the end.
very,
South.
yes, on the very south end, you could, of small,
because of the setbacks.
Yes, yes, very small. But it is possible, so.
Now, it looks like that lot to the very north, is that, why isn't it included?
The lot to the north is owned by a different owner.
Clear to the north,
Referencing
next to
this
LaRue.
property?
Yes.
Yes, that's a different owner, a different piece of property.
Oh, okay.
And it's already, I believe it is already zoned.
C2?
R3 is what it is
R3?
zoned right now. So it
Be
doesn't
a
have.
little tough to build on that one, too.
Yes, it used to be a former site of a well.
Well.
And so, and it only has access from LaRue Road.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion,
I move
commissioners?
that we approve the staff recommendation to rezone, for the rezoning request.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance 2831-2019 for rezoning from A to C2. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
Item 10E, the governing body is asked to consider a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning from R3 multifamily residential to C2 general commercial district at 301 North 4th Street, Garden City, Kansas. If approved, this would be ordinance number 2832-2019.
And you have the complete staff reports in your packet. This request is to rezone a single lot for Western Motor Company Incorporated to construct a parking lot for their employees. This went through the Planning Commission at their April 18th meeting. The vote was 6-4-1 voting nay to recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning request.
I
That's
really appreciate the work
vacant.
of the planning commission. That's a lot of discussion, so they've done a lot of work, so thank you, and I mean, whoever the staff is involved.
As an aside, because I know we've had discussions about, and part of the discussion in the planning committee minutes was about abandoned housing and uncomped housing and whose responsibility is this and those kind of things. And I think it would be incredibly useful to maybe have a public meeting about this and clarify what the law is, what we can and can't do, how we go about this, because it seems like there's still some ambiguity about that, even, as we've had ongoing discussions, and I think that came out in this discussion here. That doesn't pertain to what we're voting on here, but I thought that came out in this planning commission discussion, so.
Okay, we can do that.
Is that there's a house on there now?
There was.
There
was.
Okay.
Yes, it has, a demolition permit was issued, the structure was raised, and they're now waiting for their process to request this rezoning request. Their next step will go through the site plan process for their access and what improvements they'll be required to do for their parking lot.
Okay. Any further questions?
What was the ordinance number again?
2832-2019.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2832-2019.
I'll second. There's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2832-2019 for rezoning of R3 to C2. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, we have someone here on item 12D. I thought if we could take that issue up and then maybe take a 10-minute break.
That
would be great.
I think we're probably reaching some limits. 12D, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an application for a Kansas Emergency Solutions Grant through the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. Melissa.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you. This is on behalf of the City of Garden City has been approached by Marcy Smith of Catholic Charities of Southwest Kansas and Haley Knoll of the Family Crisis Center to apply for the 2019-2020 Kansas Emergency Solutions Grant. We did apply for this last year, and you guys approved our request to apply for that grant, and we were awarded that funding and have been managing that grant for those services over throughout the year, and it has gone very well. So we're coming back to you again to request that we are able to apply for this grant again.
I make a motion that we approve the application for the grant.
Is there a second?
I second. Go ahead.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the application for the ESG through the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That was an enormous grant application,
Was it?
so thank you for doing that, because I think it's very worthy. It was an
Is it
enormous
is it the
application.
same-
Credit where credit's due, they are very compliant in helping us fill out these forms, and so I literally only have to sign them, so it makes it very easy for us to manage
Wow.
this grant.
Is it the same
Thank you,
amount?
Marcy, and your services.
Yeah.
I did have a question, though, because we just re-upped our membership with Great Plains Development, and I didn't hear this in the report from their director when they came over about having problems with this grant. Was there a particular issue why they couldn't manage this grant, or? I'm just glad we have the grant, but I was interested in that.
Yeah, this was the first time that they've had to manage the grant before. They've never done it before, and it was a little bit difficult for them and the applicants that went through the process. And so our staff stepped in to help out, and we've kind of taken over at that point as a staff to do that, to ensure. Because the issue with a lot of these grants is, in order to keep getting them, or to allow the organizations we partner with to keep getting these grants, they need to go smoothly and go well. And so in this case, we did step in to take over that, and Melissa's kind of headed that up with them to make sure that it goes through, so.
3:15.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
Okay,
doing that.
thanks. We'll take a,
What, you wanna, have we voted on it?
Wait,
Okay.
yes.
I want to thank you guys for approving that for us, and I do want to
We have.
thank Melissa, because she has been a huge help in getting
We have.
everything set up so that we
We
can
have voted.
run it smoothly. So I just want to
Yes.
give credit where credit's due.
okay,
Good job. Thank you.
all right. You take
So
a-
you had voted
Yes.
on that?
Yeah,
All right,
we
very
did.
good.
Yep.
And then we went backwards.
So we'll take
I will take that
a, we'll,
Okay, take it personally.
Okay, well,
3:15, we'll reassemble.
just stretch my legs.
Yeah. And if
The
One
Savory
has
has
some
that on
political
there, so.
difficulty, the other
Social
should.
Security won't be happy.
He's gonna work at the golf course.
Yeah, he got a girl. This was the best I've ever seen.
He's been in the movies
From the
3
rack?
times. He's
Yes.
All right,
It's new, I've never done it.
That's good to
We'll
know.
talk.
time to go to work.
Yeah.
Time to go to work.
Okay.
Let's, we still waiting for one commissioner. And thank you, commissioners. But while we're waiting to get started again on the rest of the agenda, just a reminder, we'll conclude with an executive session that could go a while. If you need anything or anticipate needing anything, we'll hang around. We'll hang around in the building. If it needs to go after 5 p.m., we'll hang around in the building after 5 p.m. So you just go as long as you feel you need to. And we'll have somebody on staff here to assist.
To let us out.
Yeah.
Or not, we
or
might not. We
eventually.
might.
And I'll inform that unlucky person who gets to
Who's out there
perform
drawing
that
straws.
role.
All right.
I think we're ready for item F, are we
F.
not?
Yes.
10F, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an environmental nuisance resolution, which if approved, would be resolution number 2812-2019. Caleb?
Yes, you have this is for environmental for items that are in the yard at 1504 North 13th Street. This property owner we have worked with in the past, and they do have some issues with the property, but just to let you know that typically this individual does come in and work with us, and we work with them to address those items. At this point, we've have not heard from them at this point, but we do know that they have worked with us in the past, and so you have the resolution before you to gives the timeline for the remediation of the yard violation nuisance ordinance exists.
And Caleb, would it be fair to say, because of a past relationship with the person, that he, while we're still asking and recommending the governing body pass the resolution, we'll still make an attempt to try to make direct contact, and if we're able to accomplish that, give the person an opportunity to abate it themselves, but this would still give us the authority to abate the action if we don't.
That's correct, absolutely.
I'll make the motion, we approve resolution 2812-2019.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2812-2019 at 1504 North 13th. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
We're ready for item 12A, and I'll invite Melinda Hitz up to review. And Melinda, you can have my seat, so you don't have to stand the whole time. Review the enterprise funds and support funds, chapter 2 of the 2020 budget process.
Under your goals section, we have placed the goals in there that you ratified at your last meeting. so that you'll have those in your packet as you finish up the budget discussions. So we're on for May 7th. First budget we're looking at here this morning, or this afternoon, is the golf course. We carried over $11,177 into 2019. And if you go down through the revenues, you'll see green fees for 2019 are set at $150. For 2020, they are set at $162.5. The other line items are memberships. We're at $110,000 for 19, $112,500 for 2020. Golf cart rental is at $170,000 for 19 and $186 for 2020. The other large line item for revenues, of course, is the concessions. We did go up quite a bit in this line item because we did switch the way the holes, we switched the nines. So now hole number 9 will be coming past the clubhouse and going to number 10, so it should up those concessions. This year, we're not participating in the concessions for the wind games. Another entity is doing that. And the other large line item is the transfer from the general fund. It's at $375,000 both years, and then a transfer from Special Rec and Park, $40,000 both years. That's consistent with previous years. We're trying to keep it at that number, but you know there are times when we have to exceed that in order for the course operations to run as they should. We view that $375,000 from the general fund as sales tax comes into our community from the golf course, and we view that kind of as a sales tax disbursement. So, anything, we've got both Jason and Clay here. So when we get through with the clubhouse here, if you have any questions for Jason. We have 2 full-time employees in the clubhouse, along with, you know, a lot of seasonal help to get the operation going. And along with those salaries are the benefits. Going down into the operating expenses, we do have, you know, advertising, but another line item is the contracted golf pro, 523716. It's larger in 19 than it is in 20 because we did the final payout on the gift certificates that came over from a previous pro to the current pro, so we've got all of those paid off now. Repair equipment and repair buildings are some other line items in the clubhouse area. On the next page, you'll see clubhouse concessions at $66,000 this year, $67,000 next year. And so that brings the total expenses in 2019 for the clubhouse at $402,961 and $407,650 for 2020. So that's staying fairly consistent. Jason, do you want to come up and talk about a few things that you've got going with the advisory board? And
Mayor, Commissioners, how are y'all today? Good.
Yeah.
The golf course is getting rained on, so it's
It's gorgeous right now.
We have our last advisory board meeting. We've talked about putting together some information about a small increase in our green fee pricing. We would go take our weekday price of $25 to $30, in our weekend price of $30 to $35. I think we have a product that is well worth $50 on the weekends and $45 during the week. That doesn't really affect the community. It's going to be people that come in from out of town.
You mean it's for out of county?
Well, no, it would just be our normal fee. But with somebody that plays locally, with our membership fees and our annual pass fees, they would be better off pursuing that angle versus trying to pay a green fee every day.
And when's that going to be implemented, the increase?
Well, we'll ask the advisory board to rubber stamp it on their end, and then we would bring it to the commission to approve.
Okay.
The other thing, as Melinda said, we are not operating the wind concession this year, so our seasonal payroll will probably go down, hopefully quite a bit compared to what it's been in years past.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because when I spoke with Melinda, thank you also for making time to answer a bunch of questions, or say, hey, ask this person. But the master plan, I mean, I know that you indicated you just received that, and you will be presenting that sometime?
We will, we actually met with Todd Clark and Zach Vardy this morning. We saw their first renditions of the golf course improvement plan, and what that's going to look like. They also, unsolicited, kind of, they have been in, or know what we've been talking about as far as the clubhouse goes and this and that. So they provided us an initial drawing of where they thought the clubhouse would work best, and flow patterns and different things like that. So we saw that for the first time this morning. So we will we had a couple people from Friends of Buffalo Dunes and one advisory board member that was able to make it out this morning. So we'll be presenting that to both of them along with Matt and Jennifer in the next week to 10 days, and hopefully have something to y'all fairly quickly.
And I know you talked about the old clubhouse. I just, so is it, or will you have to have, will that be in a budget sometime when you have to renovate the old clubhouse? Or how will that work?
I would assume that it's going to be a large number to renovate it. That would be a Friends of Buffalo Dunes project. Yes. I mean, we've the last 20 months, we've actually made some pretty significant strides in there as far as paint and countertops and different things. So we've been trying to bring that up to par as much as we can.
So you don't have any seasonal, you've got, on the maintenance end, you don't have any additional employees, right?
They both have seasonal.
We just don't put numbers in the
Yeah, we
positions.
Oh.
They just get a total dollar amount, and then they can hire
They
as
can
many as
use
they
it.
need.
That way, if you get somebody really good, you can pay them a little bit more, hire less people. If you
Right.
have a bunch of early starter, that have never done it before, you can pay them all at the start and get more of them. That's totally within their discretion as department
And
heads.
there's no benefits for those, or,
Exactly.
yeah, seasonal, okay. Go ahead. Anything
Do you
else?
have anything else, Jason, on your end?
No, ma'am. No, sirs.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jason.
Keep up the good work.
So then we go into 712, and that is the operation of the golf course. There are 5 full-time employees here, along with their benefits, and the expenses that you'll see in operations are mainly for repairing equipment, repairing water service. If you go down into the commodities, you'll see expenses for fertilizer, insecticide, fungicide. It's just everything that just keeps that turf and trees, as pretty as you see it today. There
Green
is,
doesn't come free. So.
yeah, there's a new equipment for 19. There's a mower in there, and there's also one in 20. We had to reduce the amount in 20 slightly due to some cash basis problems. So if we come out better in 19 than we think in our cash carryover into 2020, that number will go back up to 64,000, but we'll just have to wait and see how things turn out. Clay's here, and I think maybe he's probably got a few things that he would like to bring up with you.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be inside. Rained on, so,
Dry.
way to pick this day for me to get inside. As far as the seasonals go, I have 2 high school kids lined up this year. I have a college kid, and then we have 3 adults that are very seasoned. So I kind of have a mix of all varieties, age levels and skill levels. So. We had a great winter. We've had a great spring so far, and if there's
Everything
anything
looks
else.
good.
Yeah.
Clay, are there any big events coming up this year that you guys are, I was going to ask Jason too, and I forgot. Any
Yeah,
big events
so
that are coming up that you guys are
May
preparing
is
for?
pretty easy for us. June will be our first one with the AJGA. And then we'll go into August with the Southwest Kansas Pro-Am, and September will be the Symetra Tour.
Oh, okay.
Recently, we've been awarded the 2020 Women's Junior College National Championship, so next year in May, we will have a big tournament. And hopefully, next year, we don't have a snowstorm 2 weeks before our national championship like we did the previous one, so.
Have you ever talked to Southwind as far as combining and buying fertilizer? And is there any, in other words, is there any benefit there?
I don't know, because our varieties are different, the requirements are different, so I don't know that we're necessarily on the same page. And it doesn't seem like I don't think that we would ever get to the bulk amount that these fertilizer companies are looking for to get that needed discount. Now, if we were maintaining 1,000 acres, yes, I think we could, but where we're maintaining a smaller amount.
We've also got parks.
Right. It's very specialized. They have bent grass fairways, we have ryegrass and stuff, so the requirements are a little different, so we kind of do more custom blends. Both of us do, that are slightly different.
Okay, I didn't know.
Thank you.
Good.
Keep up the good work.
Yep.
So total expenses in 2019 for the golf course is $995,299, and for 2020 we're at $1,018,750. Fund number 71 is the golf course building fund. This is where $5 of the fees go into this transfer fee revenue. And then we also have revenue that we get off of advertising on the T signs and the scoreboard. These funds are then used for capital projects out at the golf course. In 2019, the $40,000 is going to be used for the study. And then next year, the $33,694 will be used for things that come out of that study on things that they need to improve on. So they have some funds available there. Total expenses in 2019 are $40,000, and then in 2020, they are $33,694. The next fund is the solid waste fund, fund number 75. We carried over $3,518,298, and we have collections for 2019 at $3,850,000, and then in 2020 at $3,009,000. We do have penalty income that comes into solid waste off of the utility bills. And then we also have recycling sales that we're showing here both years at $40,000. The next page shows how the rates work. So you have a little bit of history on your rates, starting with 2016. But when you go to the very end, 2025, you can see what the rates are looking like. This ordinance currently does not have any stop to adding the 50 cents every year.
So at what point do you recommend us discussing or thinking about saying this is enough, or?
I'm thinking after you decide on your facility that you're going to put out east of town and see what kind of debt service you're going to have on that, that would be a good time to take a look at making a solid waste rate. Did that sound right?
Yeah.
Solidification of the
Yeah.
solid waste rate.
That was a solid decision there.
I was looking at
Same here? Yeah.
at recycling.
Punch you up here.
And I mean, we get $40,000 worth of income, and we got expenses of 5 people.
Yep.
Yeah, our
It's,
expenses run around $213,000 a
To
year.
save 40,000. But
Yeah.
there
is
would
that
be
for
some
that?
some fees. I mean, we'd have some extra stuff to take to the landfill, which is a little hard to determine, but it's a losing proposition. But
Yeah, over the years, I mean, we were making 100 plus, then it dropped to 80,
Yeah,
and
now
now we're
it's
down to
40.
40.
So where are
A
you
lot of
selling-
that has to do with China, and
they're not taking.
they're not taking it,
plastic.
so that's the reason we're not getting as much for what we produce.
So Sam, do you have to wait to so long before you can ship it out, or how does that work? So you have to have so many tons or something before
We
you?
do have a warehouse, and we store our product there, and so we ship by truck, and it's the hauling costs that are getting on us too, because we
Yeah.
haul ours to Hutch. That's the closest that we can find that will take our product. You can make it cheaper for us to do a single source. However, the revenues will go down because they don't accept those single sources and they don't pay very well. So we're trying to get the most out of what we produce.
Cardboard, it's still, isn't that the best?
Yeah,
And you get the most out
yeah.
of it.
Cardboard and white paper.
Okay. that was-
So this is a good analysis on a multi-year basis to refer back to. The expenses, when we go into solid waste, we have it split between operations and recycling. So 511 is operations. There's 21 employees in that area, along with their benefits. Some of the larger expense line items, if you look at the next, if you go back 2 pages, there's going to be a breakdown of these expenses. But we have contracted contractors, and you'll see in there that we've got tree trimming for the alley program, $50,000 each year. And then there is a new project in 2020 that Solid Waste is helping fund, and that's the fiber to go from this building to the zoo. Solid Waste is helping with the funding on that, so is the electric fund, and so is the general fund. The other larger expenses are landfill charges, $1,024,000 this year, $1,026,000 next year. Repair vehicle, as you know, trash trucks do require lots of repairs, $115,000 each year. On the next page, when we go into new equipment, you've got that detail on this sheet that I was referring to. New equipment vehicles, we have 2 side loaders this year. The one that we budgeted for last year didn't come in, so it's budgeted for in this year. So there's 2 trucks in 2019. There's also 2 trucks in 2020, and then that finishes off that grant that you have with CNG. $55,000 for a 1-ton chassis with box, and then we have half-ton pickups in 2019.
And those are based on the fleet, just replacing the fleet, is that what that is, or? Because
Yes.
I know you created a whole replacement of the fleet.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah, we
Right.
do follow a replacement plan. It's by mileage or it's by maintenance cost. So when that vehicle gets to a point where the maintenance cost is more than what the truck's valued at, then we get rid of it. And then also we look at over 100,000 miles, we start looking at the vehicles. So we do have a program that does kind of follow that pattern.
Mr. Kern, behind the recycling center in that fenced-in area, there's all those trash containers. Are those ones that are in circulation, or are those now kind of on their way out and in need of being recycled?
I believe those are the ones that are going out. We just received our shipment, so we purchased about 250 or 350 a year, 340 a year. And so now we're getting those out into the public and bringing in the old ones. Some of the old ones we'll try to salvage and put new bottoms on some of them, but most of them are shot, and then they'll go to the recycling, and we'll get some funds from that.
So,
Okay, thank you.
we approved a project where they don't have alleys, so there's not gonna be the big recycling bin. So who purchases the poly carts? Do the homeowner themselves?
No, we
Oh, you provide
we
them?
provide the poly carts. The first one, if they damage it or lose it, then they'll have to put down a deposit for the next one. But the city is, we provide the first one. And if one of them loses a lid or something, we repair that at no cost to them.
And you're using steel, now you went back to steel?
Yes, our
Okay.
plastic distributor went way east, so we can't get to them, so the cost is more expensive than steel.
Under land acquisition, 60/30, that's the $540,000 this year. That is the ground that you just recently purchased east of town. And then the $850 for 2020 is to get started on an architect for that facility.
This would be a good year for you, Dan. I'm just kidding.
So that makes the total expenses, total expense, oh, let me go into recycling next. 512. We have 4 full-time employees here, along with their benefits, and as you can see, 242,200 for 2020 in total expenses, with 40,000 in revenue coming in. So the total expenses for 2019 are $4,495,000, and we do budget the full fund, so we're going to have a cash carryover going into 2021 of $2,078,850. That makes total expenses in 2020 at $7,032,000.
One thing, when you look at the analysis sheet, those areas at the bottom there are highlighted blue. That is where the landfill increases their cost to us. It's 4%. I believe it's every 3 years or 4 years, they do a 4% increase on us.
Is that something you negotiate, or is it
That's something we negotiate. One of the things that, the contract, I believe, is up in 2025 with the landfill, or we could maybe start talks to talk about what we're gonna do, because I think one of the things that's gonna be affected is the spring and fall cleanup. Our town's getting bigger. We can't get it done in 2 weeks, and that is built into the contract. And so they were pretty stick about letting us exceed another day. They told us no. So we ate the last couple of days of spring cleanup, at city at large. And so we'll need to kind of figure it, and they might just cut it back to 1 cleanup for 3 weeks. So that's something we'll negotiate, but again, that's up in 2025. Okay.
You also have included equipment replacement information here through 2023, and then also the projects, which the project would be the building out east. The last item we're going to look at here today is the drainage utility. Revenues coming in to the drainage utility are right around $300,000. We have 1 employee in this area. The projects that are going to be going on for the drainage utility are listed under contracted project. It's going to have the concrete alley reconstruction in 2020. In 2019, we have the East Side Retention Pond task order, $63,600. There's going to be the FEMA study in 2019 at $250,000. In 2020, the master plan model at $120,000, and then annual main cleaning service both years at $40,000.
Hey, that coordinator, stormwater coordinator, it says code officer. Does he do both?
Yes. Yeah, he enforces the stormwater, which is regulatory, which our code enforcement officer assists with that, so.
And so the clean out, it's still less expensive to do, rather than do it ourselves, to have someone contract out to do that?
At this point, it is.
So
it's about 40,000. That 160,000 in there is, I'm sorry, there's some additional funds. Over at the old high school, Horace Good, we had a collapse of the storm system. So that money's there in case we do have collapsed system that we have to go in there and replace that. So that's the additional money that's there, in there.
Who is the contractor on the FEMA study? Because I see that the FEMA studies are 250, is that right?
250.
250,000.
We just signed the task order with Wilson, our in-house.
So it is our, okay.
It's our in-house that's doing.
So that's an additional to the dollars that we paid them, the $1 million we paid
Yes.
them? Wow.
Yes.
So the other thing was the East Side Retention Pond. Is there, so when will that start showing up? Because I know that's something we're gonna have to do, and I think it's 2.7 or, so when will those, will it be after 2020, or when will
That
it
will be
start?
2020. That'll happen at the same time that we're doing a Jenny Barker project, because they'll both go hand in hand with dirt work. The other thing is, I think we're working with some local developers that need some additional dirt. And so they'll be doing some of the digging for us. And so hopefully that'll reduce our $2.7 million.
That's a lot of money. But you have to have that.
Yeah. Too flat.
Oh, I know. is, it's true.
This also has a rate schedule with it, and the rate keeps increasing until 2023, and then it levels out. At that point, we'll take a look at, see what we had to bond for that for that detention pond, and see what kind of rate we would have to pay off the debt. That's all I have for
Thank
today.
you. Good job.
Good. That's the shortest one.
I know. Last week was pretty long.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
Took
it.
forever.
Say what?
He's across the hall.
Oh.
She's gonna put that.
Celine? Here he comes.
She's looking for
Yeah,
it.
there you go.
That's right.
Let's just go without her.
Yeah.
Sneaky, sneaky.
I'm trying not to
Who
spread
needs
out.
the city clerk,
That's
right?
okay.
Yeah.
I've got this.
I love how Sam
Hey,
ran.
would you get the city clerk?
Sam,
I think she fell.
Is she here now?
She was looking
Fell? Uh-oh.
she fell.
Oh, no. She
Did we
okay?
rescue her?
Yeah, she's fine.
Could be a workman's comp claim or something.
Don't let HR see you.
Yeah, I know.
They'll make you fill out all kinds of paperwork.
All right.
Professional service
Okay.
agreement. You all right?
Okay.
We are ready for item 12B. Governing body's asked to consider and approve professional services agreement with Charlesworth Consulting LLC. Would you like me to do this, Celine? Or do you want to?
No. I don't have any, sorry.
I'll tell the governing body, we've used Charlesworth since 2003. They're our independent insurance advisor for our property and casualty, for our property and casualty insurance. We also use Charlesworth and Associates for advising us on employee benefits. Those are the same company, two different brothers. This agreement is our relationship with James Charlesworth's services. So this is for the property and casualty piece. This agreement represents the way he does work for us, which is not just at renewal, but advising us throughout the year when we have new pieces of equipment or new properties or considering events, or maybe a new approach to how we do something at the pool, or whether or not we allow certain events at, just those, when folks ask the question, what about liability? We do ask that question, and we know. And we understand also that we have insurance to cover risk. But to assess that risk and where our coverage may have us taken care of and where our coverage may leave exposure, James is the one that helps sort all that out for us. So I would strongly recommend approving the professional service agreement attached, which would have a monthly expense of $750.
I just had a question about the fee structure. Is that based on the amount of our policy, or our number of employees, or size of organization, or is that his kind of set for the service he provides?
My understanding is it's a flat fee based on the service he provides.
Okay, thank you.
I
You
thought
know for sure.
that he doesn't get any kind of a commission when he.
He's an independent insurance advisor. He's,
Okay, so doesn't he shop?
he shops it, right?
I'll make the motion that we approve the professional service agreement as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the professional service agreement with Charlesworth Consulting LLC. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item, staff is requesting the governing body provide some direction on the city's snow removal and ice control plan. Specifically, we'd like direction on the following items: plowing and operations for residential streets, de-icing or pre-wetting treatments for ice control, emergency snow routes, and consideration of adding streets to the primary route. So we've got a snow removal plan. Sam's going to go over that with you, go over some of the other options. This was a little bit of a cumbersome cover memo. We tried to organize it sort of with that decision tree and took a lot of took a lot of staff time in trying to organize it around these major headings, but it really is, and surprised as to why we're talking about it. Previous years, snow removal hasn't been at the top of the list, but after this last winter, we really did look at what does our plan say we do, what do we really do, and what are we hearing out there with respect to what it sounds like maybe the some community members might be interested in, and can we assign a cost to that? What is a cost that we would incur regardless of if it snows, and what are the costs that would be incurred per snow event? So Sam, take it away.
Thank you. We're taking this opportunity to reevaluate what we're doing, and there's a lot of questions that are asked of us from the public. We've received both positive and negative comments from the public. One thing that's kind of surprising, they always compare us to communities in the northern half of the state or even above that. They're comparing us, and that's comparing apples and oranges. So this has been a difficult year. We had a lot of temperatures below 20 degrees, which caused that icy condition, and that was one of the major complaints that we received, trying to get that off the streets. I did want to assure the governing body and the community that we do have a plan. Here's the plan. It was adopted by the commission or revised by the commission in October 2012. And so if we do make changes, we'll bring this back to you for your approval. When we're dealing with snow removal, we have a lot of factors that cause us to either do a very good job or we have complaints. And I've listed those out for you. One is rain. And I can tell you, these 5 conditions happened in the very first snowstorm, all 5 of them. And it just set us backwards. And so we received a heavy rain, about 2 inches before the first snowfall. And then it turned to freezing conditions. Airport struggled, we struggled. And then the time of day, it happened at the wrong time of day. If we can get snow to fall between 11 and 2 in the morning, and everybody's asleep, and we're out there by ourselves, that's the best situation. But this happened during the day. We had extreme winds, couldn't see, had temperatures that were in single digits, we had drifting problems, and then because of the rain, we had 2 trucks stuck in mud for an hour and a half. And then we had 2 other pieces of equipment trying to get those 2 out for an hour and a half. And so that set us back in that first snowstorm. So that was some of the things that causes us problems. One thing I didn't list, and we should list it on there, is manpower. We have new employees in the street department. There was about 4 of them that never been in a snow plow, but they do have their CDLs. And so we just threw them in and said, follow the truck in front of you. And so they learned from the very first snowstorm. And that's one thing that the more snows we have, our crew gets better and better. And we haven't had these kinds of snowstorms, so the crew's kind of trying to figure it all out again. So that's one of the issues we have to balance with trying to attack snow. And our fleet our manpower is aging. So you're gonna see a lot more retirements in street department. So we're gonna be dealing with new employees and trying to train them. One thing we do before the season starts is we put all the people in trucks. We have a primary route with 3 crews. One crew is 4 trucks. They get in a truck and they drive their route and make sure that they identify obstacles that they might have to drive around. And each crew does that. So we do that, but it's a whole different story when you throw them out there when it's snowing, blowing, you can't see. And so that's some of the issues. The number one question that's asked us is, why don't we plow residential streets? I'd like to have my street plowed. And so when they compared us, one of the towns they compared us to is Manhattan. Manhattan has 14 plow trucks. We have 7. They have 26 employees that move snow. We have 13. And so they have a little bit more equipment than we do. And our main priority right now, we follow the plan, and to get to some of the residential streets, in which we do have a difficult time getting to them, And that's because the time it takes to plow and clean the primary routes and the secondary routes. And then when we get that done, if we do have time to get back into residential streets, we look at through streets. We don't plow all the streets. If there's a through street that's drifting, those are the streets that we plow. But a lot of times, by the time we can get to them, they're snow packed. The traffic's already packed them down.
It's hard.
And then the homeowners have already cleaned their driveways and their sidewalks. And the last thing I want to do is send a crew through there and we close them back up again. They usually call us back when we do that. So that's an issue that we have just dealing with the property owners. So the question is, how do we plow residential streets and how many do we plow? So we recommend at this time to stay with what we're doing. And one thing that I would recommend is switching out two of our half-ton four-wheel drive pickups to a 3/4 ton pickup with a plow and allow us to plow the residential streets on the secondary route that's around schools, which will allow us an opportunity to evaluate that system for plowing residential streets if we're going to look into plowing residential streets. A lot of communities do use pickups with plows. And the other benefit of switching to pickups is we can use those pickups year round. Right now, our 7 trucks we park them in the lot and they're there for about 9 months. And we use them for spring cleanup, fall cleanup, and snow removal. And that's what they're used for. Pickups we use year round. So our recommendation is to switch out 2 of our pickups and plow our secondary routes with the pickup units. And that will also allow us to attack our secondary routes a little bit faster. We had a hard time with schools this year getting them open. And so this would allow two operators to clear those streets at the same time we're doing the primary route. So that would be our first recommendation that's going to be coming to you at the end here. I did want to kind of tell you about the priorities and the methods that we use. I'll go back real quick. The cost for a pickup plow unit is $45,000. Now we're beefing up the front end, we're beefing up the back end, and we have the plow. So to switch out 2 of those, that's going to be $90,000. I did want to say that our plowing priorities and methods, the primary route is based on volume of traffic. So our primary roads, our arterials and collectors, that's what we're responsible for clearing at the very beginning. And those are also safety sensitive. Those are streets around hospitals, police stations, fire stations. So we clear those first. And we plow to the curb, except for the downtown. We do not move to the secondary route until the primaries are cleared. So if it continues to snow, they just keep going through the route until the primary's done. And then we'll switch over to secondary. So that's part of our problem. It might be 16 hours before we even get to the secondary roads. And so then the secondary roads kicks in, and those are the roads around schools. We do plow to the curb. This year, they struggled a little bit with the amount of snow that we pushed over to them, and we tried to assist them to remove some of the snow around the curbs. And then we have some residential areas that are identified in the plan, and those are the through streets, mainly the ones that drift shut. We try to open those up. And then we have, of course, the special requests, drifting issues, and then medical emergencies. We will break off at any time if we get contacted by the police department saying, hey, we need to get somebody to the hospital or we need to get to them, then we will plow to them, assist the safety people, and then we go back to our route. So that's kind of our priorities and methods that we use. Any questions about that? And we'll look at the maps at the end and we'll kind of go through those priorities, but any questions about plowing operations?
That sounds really, I mean, reasonable, logical,
Okay.
good use of resources.
So the next area that there was questions about is ice control and management. Right now, the city currently uses salt and sand mixture. We have 2 small spreaders and 2 large spreaders. So we have a mixture of salt and sand, and we salt and sand intersections. The approach is going into intersections and hills. We do not salt and sand all the streets unless the police department calls us and says, hey, we're having problems at this bridge, which that happened this year on the bridge south of town. We had some accidents there, it was icy. The police department called us, so we broke off and did some salt and sand in there. So we only do the singleized intersections, the intersections along the primary routes, the steep hills, and then we salt around the schools, and then we kind of hit residential streets as we're going to those, and then when we get requests, we will also do those.
Sam, does KDOT do any of the streets that they identify as state street or state highways? Do they do any of that with that one mixture, or there's nothing in town done by them?
There's nothing in town that they do other than the streets that they're responsible for. So when they leave their shop, our maintenance agreement ends at campus.
Okay.
And so they'll take everything east, and then our responsibility ends on Kansas Avenue at Crestway. However, our crew does go ahead and go all the way to Jenny Barker and turn around and come back through. So we kind of crisscross a little bit. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so there is 2 ice management options that are currently being used that are most common out there. One is a pretreatment, which is a salt brine. That is made up of water and sodium chloride. You can see the mixture is between 23 to 26% salt. That's what KDOT does out on the highway. You see those lines, and that is salt brine. That's done prior to the storm. So you better have a good crystal ball. The first snowstorm that we had wouldn't have worked because we had put it out there, 2 inches of rain,
Right.
it's gone. So that's one of the issues you have to deal with that. It is very corrosive, or I'm gonna say it is corrosive. It does have some negative effect to certain things. In visiting with KDOT office, they do have the ability to make salt brine, and they're willing to work with the city on a trial basis for 1 to 2 years if we want to get into this. But at that point, then we would have to buy the equipment, make it ourselves, store it ourselves, and handle that material. So what I put in there for cost for you is to put this down, we would have to have at least 1 unit to apply the salt brine, and that's around $12,700. Material cost, I'm saying is probably $100 to $550 per storm, depending on how many streets you do, or if you do intersections.
Well, we know how many streets, so what's the 100, how many miles is the lane miles is the 100 based on, how many lane miles is 550 based on?
Okay, so I'm basing the 550 on about 100 and, I'm guessing around 130, 140 lane miles. Now, that's just to primaries and secondaries. That's no residential areas. That's just our primary
And it
route.
would take us about a day to put that down with 2
Yes.
vehicles, or 1 vehicle?
1 vehicle. So we'd have to get started pretty early on that. The 100 is just hitting the intersections, just like we do salt and sand. So that's the pre-treatment. We do have a solution for doing it before the storms or during the storms with calcium chloride. This is a process where you pre-wet the salt and sand as it leaves the spreader. So you have a little spray bar, and as the salt and sand goes down, it's pre-wet. The best part of this is this solution allows your salt to stay active below 20 degrees. You can get down into the 10 or 11 degrees and it's still active, so it's burning off the ice. However, to get into this process, we would have to have a bulk storage tank and confinement areas, so if we had a spillage, that you'd have to confine that in there. And that's around $30,000. To retrofit 5 spreaders, I said 4, but we have 5, is at $10,000. It's about $2,000 per unit. And the other side, the bigger cost, is you would have to buy bulk on this material. And so your bulk would come in at around 4,000 gallons. So I'm guessing that you would be between 4,000 gallons and 6,000 gallons, but you'd have to buy two of those tankers, so you're buying 8,000 gallons. And so that cost is about $30,000 to do
Those would be
that.
probably plastic tanks, fiberglass.
Probably, or it could be a steel with some kind of liner in it. And so that's your two options if you wanted to move into some kind of de-icing or pre-treatment. And we kind of looked at the seasons, and we typically have a storm or a winter season about every 8 years. So we've done this about 3 times.
How early would you have to get out? Was it a day before or the day of, or how would you have to?
For the
Right.
for the pre-treatment, you'd
Right.
have to be out the day before. The pre-wetting, you can do it during the storm. During the storm.
Do you think that would cut down on time, either plowing or having to go back with those ones that take a while? I mean, save on manpower, or do you think you would still basically be using the same amount of manpower?
I think you'd still be using, because as long as the snow's falling, we're plowing. All this is gonna do is when we stop plowing, what's left there is gonna start burning off, and you're gonna get down to pavement again.
I think our system works pretty well, the way it is.
It's inconvenient when it's years
I
like
mean,
this.
you're not gonna have, we've had, this last year was the exception, but
Yeah, we,
most of the
like I said, we get these about every 8 years so far. That's how it's fit into what we looked at. I did look at the accidents. We had 113 accidents through the whole winter season when we had snow or ice on the ground. So we averaged about 1.77 accidents a day.
Several of the local businesses were excited. Robinson Lyman had to go out the roof with all that.
So after looking at it, because we don't have these kinds of conditions all the time, staff felt like that we would not move into this area, but keep evaluating it. That's kind of what our recommendation on that would be. And then the emergency snow route, real quick on that. We do have an emergency snow route ordinance. It was established in 2001, and that's where when we have a snowstorm, that the city manager or their designee could declare it. And if you're on one of those routes and it's posted, you're supposed to get your car off the road or could be ticketed or towed. Since we passed this ordinance, we have never issued an emergency. And I checked with other communities. I think this was kind of a thing that in Public Works, we all did it. Most of the communities have not enacted their emergency snow routes just like we have. And so our recommendation, if we don't really need it, let's get rid of it. Or if you do want to use it, we need to make it more effective on how we declare emergencies so we can use it as a tool. But right now, cars parked on the primary routes, most of our primary routes are no parking anyway. And those cars that are parked on some of them, they don't impede our ability to plow. They will get plowed in, and then they'll have to deal with
Just
that.
go around it.
But it does not impede our guys to go through that. So that's the emergency snow route. And then I also listed real quick some additional streets that I think need to be added to the snow plan for primary routes. And those are the new shopping areas. And again, that deals with traffic volume. So our alternatives for you for snow removal, for plowing residential streets is 1, make no changes to the current plan, or 2, purchase a couple 3/4 ton pickups and use those to work on the secondary routes and continue to evaluate and see if that would be a way to grow into the residential streets. And ice control, the first one be make no change to the current policy, continue using the salt and sand. 2 would be purchase the equipment required to apply the salt brine solution and work with KDOT to supply the material for 1 to 2 years for additional evaluation. 3 would be purchase the equipment required to store and apply calcium chloride for pre-wetting solution to existing equipment, or the governing body could pursue both alternatives 2 and 3. The ordinance for emergency snow routes would be, the first one would be amend the declaration and notice of emergency snow section and make the ordinance more effective winter management tool. 2, repealing the ordinance for the emergency snow routes. And then on the adding of streets to the primary routes, make no changes to the primary route, add the proposed streets to the primary route and amend the plan. Or 3, the governing body could add some additional or remove some of the streets to the plan, and again, that plan would need to be amended. Staff's recommendation for snow removal would be alternative 2, and purchase 2 3/4 ton pickups and use them for our secondary routes so that we can be more efficient at plowing secondaries and primaries together. The ice control, the pre-wetting, staff recommends alternative 1, make no changes to the current ice control section of the plan regarding the use of salt brine and calcium chloride solutions for ice management. On the ordinance for emergency snow routes, staff recommends repealing the ordinance for emergency snow routes. And then on adding the streets to the primary routes, staff recommends adding the proposed streets to the primary route and amend the plan. We do have some maps for you if you want to look at the maps, so I can kind of show you our difficulties with the equipment and manpower that we have.
Well, thank you for this very thoughtful analysis and explanation. I think it's very helpful.
The first one is your primary route. That is team 1. The next one is team 2, primary route. And then team 3 is a primary route, and that is your downtown and your frontage roads. And then here's the streets that we never get to, and this is some of the residential streets that don't surround. Some of them surround the school, some of them don't. But that is in the plan, but we do have a difficult time getting to it. And then I did do a quick analysis of the 2018-2019 costs for you and the amounts. And then I also compared it to the 2010 and 11 storm. And you can see that our costs were quite a bit higher. A lot of that's labor. And the other thing is that also includes parks. One thing that we're doing a better job in Public Works, since now we have a lot more departments in there, is we're utilizing more of the personnel. And so parks is a big factor in that.
Thanks, Sam. Any questions for Sam?
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we adopt all the recommendations as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the staff's recommendations on snow removal and ice control and additional roads, I think. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I know that was long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the memo was good though.
Mayor and Commissioners, all that remains is the consent agenda, the commissioner reports, and then an executive session. If you want to skip over item E, the executive session, and go to the consent agenda, that would be item F. If you don't want to remove anything, it'd be item F1 through 6.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda F1 through 6. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Ready for commission reports.
All right, Commissioner Cessna.
It was a good pre-meeting, a lot of good information on the water reuse and looking at ways of trying to enhance our water reuse for our community. Only other thing was, I noticed in the newspaper today that anyone interested in filling in one of the 4 seats on the Garden City Commission will be up for election in November must file with the county clerk by noon on June 3rd. To be eligible to run for election, candidates must be 18 years of age, a citizen of the United States, and must reside in the city corporate limits. Filing fee is $20 required, along with a $50 disclosure fee. And you can get that at the Finney County Election Office in the Finney County Building. I have filed to run for a seat for in the next election, so just letting everybody know. That's all I've got.
Commissioner Dick?
Same thing about the water reuse study. That's a very, very important thing for our community to figure out how we can keep on doing good things with our water and reusing it. The more we reuse it, the less we have to pump new water to use. Also like to thank Sam and his crew for all the work they do with the ice and snow removal. I know they get it hard every 8 years, but we do appreciate what they do there. Also, there was some good information, like you said before, with the CID and the new market study from the Grun and Grun. That's a really interesting read and shows the strength of our community. And then lastly, I'd like to just again reiterate, on May 11th, Garden City Community College, if you're interested in working with Great Plains Makerspace about helping develop a Garden City flag, that's the first step, and that'll be this Saturday. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Unruh.
So I want to echo the pre-meeting. I'm excited that we are on the forefront of water conservation and the opportunities we have to use it for commercial and industrial and irrigation and all the other, and recharging the aquifer is very, very important. And so I'm excited I got the chance to visit the Bureau of Reclamation when I was in Washington. That was quite an interesting discussion, and they were very favorably, they were endorsing a lot of the things that we're doing, and we're excited. I don't know that they had a budget at that time, so pretend like they had a lot of money to spend. There wasn't that. I do also want to just thank the young people who came, and also the citizens who came, and the letters. Having citizen input is really why we're here as commissioners. I mean, that's our responsibility to identify with our citizens and also to answer back to them. I think that's what makes city government really great. And so I appreciate that, and then willing to stand up and speak up. I think that's really important. I also want to remind everybody this National Peace Officers Memorial Day. I went last year. It's really moving. It's a really new service. We actually were able to hold it outside, which was amazing in Kansas sometimes with the wind and the weather. And so if you've never been to it, it's very moving. It's very touching. I'm looking forward to, the mayor was there last year as the vice mayor, so.
Yeah.
So he'll be there again this year, because I know the mayor, Roy, had to be gone that time. There are lots of really great things happening. I mean, the end of school is coming up, and so I just, as a city, I know that we're getting ready to switch to the summer, and I'm really excited about that. I do appreciate the work of our staff and the and the time and energy that goes into these. It's really appreciated. I can't tell you how much value I find as a commissioner. I know I might echo as others, that the due diligence that you go through beforehand, before you even bring it to us. And so I want to make sure that that's known, that's very appreciative. And sometimes I think that having that personal conversation, I know with budgets, that's really helped a lot. So I just want to say thank you to the staff. I think they've done an excellent job at bringing us things, especially this year, and I'm looking forward to what's going on into this year. So,
Burns.
Yeah, I think that Public Service Week is a real opportunity for us to examine the role of those who choose to serve our communities through public service in whatever role, and I hope that we all kind of take this opportunity to say thank you and to really try and understand all those things that sometimes just happen and we don't understand how or the effort that goes into it. With that, congratulations to the Citizens Academy grads, because they've really taken that step in a very proactive way. Also, I'd like to congratulate Chief Shelton on his years of service and coming retirement. He's been an amazing public servant. I really hope that we can take a close look at that parks tobacco ordinance. I'd like to see something formalized put forward for us to discuss. I think that's very important and continues the good work that's been really spearheaded by the young people of our community. And then I'd like Mr. Allen to give us an update on the sales tax
Yeah, I'd be glad to. The
law.
House Bill 2033 and House Bill 2040, I think I have the numbers right, both contained language that would make the Finney County sales tax approved in November 2017 by local voters, make it, approve that election. And there's some larger state politics attached with one of those bills, and then one of them sort of has our issue, and the other counties that were seeking a local sales tax authority more standalone. So both of those are headed to the governor for her signature, and she can either sign those or let those go 30 days without her signature. In either event, that becomes law at that point. So that's good. It's not done. It hasn't had a veto stamped on it. We don't anticipate that it will. One of those could, but just because of I think it's larger tax politics wrapped up in it. But the other one is pretty standalone, and we anticipate that at a minimum that one will get approved either with our signature or because the time runs out. So that's good news. We're not all the way there. We're on the 1 yard line, but we're not all the way there. And it'll be nice to put that behind us, and hopefully in 2 weeks when we have a city commission meeting, it will already be on the agenda, drawing your attention to it. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Mayor, I have one other thing
yes.
right quick. About a week ago, I think it was a week ago, it's been so long, but I did take Senator Roberts around on a tour of the airport terminal. When we were in Washington, D.C., when we were visiting with our various representatives up in Washington, I was visiting with Senator Roberts and asked him to come out and visit Garden City, and he took us up on his offer. And so we showed him around the terminal to show him where we're currently at with the terminal, but what we'd like to do to enhance our regional air service at the Garden City Regional Airport. Very receptive to, understands the current conditions we're in at the airport with the terminal, but very receptive of looking at helping us at trying to move the regional airport forward. We did apply for a federal grant for the terminal facility, and so we're working on that currently. But I just wanted to update the commission on that. So very positive. He had 3 staffers with him, and a lot of good questions about not only the terminal itself, but the airport overall and operations and stuff. So
Very good. I echo the comments on the pre-meeting and also the Citizens Academy, and I'd like to thank Lauren for her work. She's done a good job, and appreciate that. I'd like to thank Troy for filling in for me last Tuesday or a week ago, or last Tuesday, I guess it was, yeah. And appreciate that. The commissioners, I guess, Commissioner Cessna remembers my cards. Well, I don't do one every week this year, but anyway, pass these out. I kind of like
As evidenced by the first one coming out in May.
right, yeah,
Yeah, you're a little behind.
a little
Here.
behind.
Thank you.
Oh.
You want one? Give one. Go ahead.
Now, what is the
Okay.
ritual here? What do we?
Oh, when I see something like this, I like it.
Oh,
I
okay.
print it
That's nice.
in
Like our local Zig Ziglar. I mean, it's
Yeah.
inspirational quotes.
architectural lettering here. This is
It's on a card.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's cool. What a
But I
great
thought-
message for public service.
Yeah, I like it. You know, you got to love what you do, and if you don't, it's a little hard. So anyway, that's all. We've been here a long time. We got a little bit more to
You
do.
have,
So
yeah. If that concludes the comments, Mayor, I
Yeah.
think the next items, going into executive session for consideration or pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 pertaining to the personnel matters of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations. Because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and specifically, this is the annual evaluation of the performance of the city manager. It would be just the five of you. If you would like me for the first 5 minutes, just to go over the process, you can. Mayor, you've been through this before. If you think you guys are good to go, then it can just be all of you.
I make a motion that we, or move to that the city commission go into executive session at this time for the purpose of discussing matters of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and the city commission reconvene into open session in the city commission chambers at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 5 o'clock. Yep.
That'll work. We'll make it.
36?
Maybe for the,
36.
for the benefit,
Okay.
why
Did
don't
you
you,
say yes or no on?
yes,
Okay.
I think
I'll
once-
be in for the first 5 minutes.
5 minutes, just kind of, since we got new
I'll add
commissioners.
that Matt Allen be in for the first 5 minutes of the executive session. You'll have to put that in the minutes there.